All right, we're back. It's been a while. We haven't recorded a show in a while, but I said we'd be back, and we are. So, man, we just finished watching the G-1. Like, it was pretty good. There's a lot of crazy wrestling going on. You know, AEW has two big shows coming up. You know, Wembley, and then All Out, and then.
Oh, that's coming up. Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
All right. Yeah.
It's actually September. For a frame of reference,
I was not going to be able to keep up that farce for very long.
I know. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Punk got fired on Saturday, so it's however many days after that. But Adam finished the G1. Do what?
It's like the birth of Christ. That's what wrestling is going to be measured in now, you know?
I'm just so tired of hearing about it that I don't even care anymore.
I'll leave that to you and TJ's show to cover that.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably talk about that even more than I'd like to. But as a former CM Punk fan, it's disappointing to say the least. But that's right. So no, it's September. But Adam finished the G1 in a timely manner. I did not. I literally finished the tournament on like Saturday night, so almost a month late. But I didn't spoil it for myself somehow. I literally.
That was pretty impressive. I
basically took myself off social media. Not that I used it that much, but I wasn't checking wrestling news. Nothing during that time period did I keep up with, solely because I knew I would spoil it for myself. So,
well done.
But we're here. I finally finished it. Spoiler: Naito won. I think
the prediction was right.
Was that my prediction?
That was both of our predictions.
Okay, because I was pretty sure I said either Naito or Ospreay, and I mean, obviously having Okada as one of the other in the final four made sense, but then of course there was Evil. But so when we last were talking, I think we had gone up through night 7 or 8, like we were basically halfway through the league play, because then the playoffs, quote unquote, started, I think, on night 16. I can double check. I've got everything down here.
We'll call it halfway. Yeah.
Night 17 was when they started with 8 people, and then you had 3 nights of playoffs in a row. But yeah, I think where we left off, and I remember this specifically, the last match that I had seen was night 7, the main event with Sonata and Kiyomiya, which I remember us talking about. We really enjoyed that match. I don't remember if I had heard this before we recorded or afterwards, so I may have even mentioned this on the last show, but apparently somebody, or probably multiple people, were timing it, and the timing was actually off, and the match went over 20 minutes and should have technically been a draw. But, I mean,
I think we did talk about that last time.
It's just people who are super OCD, I guess, are timing that, but
people that don't understand kayfabe, you know, like, I mean, it would have been what I am curious. How far over did it go? Do you know?
I think I read it was under a minute, but it was more than like 30 or 40 seconds. So, I mean, literally, unless somebody's sitting there with a stopwatch, they're not going to know. But
I mean, I think that's fine for a margin of error. Like if they'd gone over by like 5 minutes or something, that might have been one thing.
I'm sure there've been a million times in other situations where they did just that. I guess I was comparing it to the last one. The last time I saw a finish that was so close on time was the first MJF Adam Cole match they did on Dynamite, where they did a 30-minute time limit. And apparently, because the same person I heard who timed the Sonata match timed this one, they said that when it hit 30 minutes and I guess the referee was about to count 3, like it genuinely hit it. They nailed it on the dot. Now, there was also, you know, a good 10 seconds of them like crawling around for the pin where you could line it up. But still, I say that's very impressive.
Was that Meltzer calling that out, or?
No, it was, I follow, they have their own Patreon called Post Wrestling. It's John Pollock and Wei Ting. John would probably be, I mean, he's not like Meltzer, but he's a wrestling journalist, but they're our age. And so like literally they're within like 3 or 4 months of our age. So I've listened to them forever, because when they go back and talk about stuff in the past, like they were the same age as me watching it, so it just correlates. But
I hear you.
But
that is impressive that they were able to get because it's funny too. I know we're here to talk about the G1 and everything, not to tread on American wrestling territory too much, but like timing issues were always something AEW had problems with early on. So that's pretty impressive that they've gotten it to the point of like literally being down to the second to the time limit and everything.
I agree. I mean, obviously, the referee's got an earpiece in, talking to probably Tony Khan in the back, and he's got a countdown for him, and the referee's probably doing a countdown for, Cole and MJF. But yeah, I don't know.
Takes a lot of people to make a show work, though, and that actually is one of the big points of distinction between American and Japanese wrestling is that American wrestling is a TV show, it's a TV product, and not that Japanese wrestling isn't, because obviously the TV companies are very major business partners. I mean, TV Asahi owns a huge piece of New Japan still, I believe.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But they don't seem to be like slaves to the TV formatting the way American promotions are.
No, I mean, American promotions make the bulk of their money off of the television rights.
Yeah.
Whereas in Japan, they still make their money off of touring. And that's why I think one thing I was keeping up with the G1 was attendance figures, because I mean, obviously it's better than it was a couple of years ago. I mean, Japan is slower to come out of COVID than the United States. That goes without saying. But
right.
I remember last year they had no restrictions on the fans, but they still couldn't cheer. And they actually had, or maybe it was I probably should have pulled up some numbers, but basically the attendance was not much better this year than last. Their average attendance, if you took all the shows, was like only 2,800 people a night. And that includes that, like, the last night had like 9,000 people, which wasn't even a sellout. And the second to last night had like 6,500 people. And besides that, I don't think they got anywhere. I don't think they passed 4,000 on any night. I mean, if you watch the shows, there were a lot of empty seats. And New Japan, they don't do like, WWE and load everybody on one side of the arena because they want it to look good on television. People just sit where they are. And if there's a big ass open area, then.
No, it's always very noticeable. And it was particularly with some of the smaller cities that they go to and everything, like, and I'm bad about recognizing, like, the only venues I ever recognize really are obviously like Korakuen Hall and like Osaka Joe and maybe a couple others, but like
maybe like Oda Ward.
Yeah. Or whatever the arena is in Kawasaki. And then it goes without saying, like Tokyo Dome, stuff like that. But and actually, they had a pretty good show in I forget, is it Sapporo? Is that the one that's up in where like Yano and Taichi and all them are from? Hokkaido, that island.
I think so. And is that where like Yano has his bar? No. His bar is in Tokyo.
He's the ambassador or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right. I know almost nothing about Japanese geography, so
I don't know much. Yeah,
I just know I have heard people talk about, like, because where is it? Whenever they go to one of the smaller places, but it's a regular stop. It's like, this is Sonata's hometown, and then like,
which one is that?
I bet as soon as you say it, I would know, but I don't remember.
I forget too, but no, like they had a good turnout in the one neither of us can remember, but I felt like there were a few that, to your point, you're just saying like, Jesus, this is the G1 and there's like 100 people there, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's, I don't know what's behind that really. I mean, I think it's, in a lot of ways, it seems like New Japan is still, business is not back where it needs to be.
Oh, no.
I did see some announcement in the past few weeks from one of their executives saying that they were going to pull back from doing shows in the U.S. and everything. And
I didn't see that.
Well, there was just saying something about, like, really, like when they started that expansion strategy, it was because there was a clear void for like a number 2 promotion in the
Right.
US. And now that obviously AEW is a very solid number 2, that they really didn't think there was enough market share to justify all the logistics of touring and everything. Like, they're still going to do it. I think they're not going to completely stop their North American presence or anything, but it's not going to be like it was in the late 2010s when they were like really pushing, especially on the West Coast. They were really like pushing like those shows
when they were doing the shows around like Omega and the Bucks and
right.
Cody. And I mean, obviously the people, it seems like most of the top, Gaijin now are actually British, if you think about it. I mean,
or Australian.
Yeah. Or
Kiwi.
Yeah.
There's
not a whole lot of Americans.
Well, and that's actually a subject that I was going to bring up when we were talking about Ospreay later, because it makes sense logistically, like, because that's always been their the hardest part about them retaining Gaijin long term have just been like, eventually that trip around the world just gets old. And especially for British wrestlers. I mean, it's tough for American wrestlers, but for British wrestlers, that's literally the other side of the world.
Really? So what is that like? Because I mean, I know from even California to Japan is like 15 hours, right?
I think it's maybe a bit more. And I mean, that's talking like a straight flight from like LAX to Narita Airport in Tokyo,
It probably is not common.
So I think that's fairly common. I mean, that's 2 major international airports, but still, like, I mean, it's a brutal flight,
So if you're going from England, you're saying it's more like 20 plus hours easily.
If you're going from London to Tokyo, I don't think there is a direct flight to that. I think you got to stop somewhere.
Because I know Ospreay lived in Japan for a couple of years. I know he doesn't anymore, but I know, what was it? Before night 18 at Sumo Hall, I saw something where he made a comment that his apartment that he lived at during that time was down the road from Sumo Hall, and he would walk by going to the grocery store and stuff like that all the time. And like before he'd actually had any kind of a big match there, now he's had a bunch, but.
Well, and I think like even for guys like him and Kenny who are, kind of otaku, like weeb, whatever term you want to use for them.
Yeah.
Even for them, it gets old after a while.
I mean he speaks fluent Japanese, and
so does Will. I think, like, maybe not fluent, but he speaks.
I'm sure he speaks enough to get around. I mean, if you're going to actually like live on your own, you kind of have to. But I think Will Ospreay is an interesting topic because I fully believe that after Wrestle Kingdom, he's gone. I think so too. I don't think Tony Khan would have put him in such a huge match at All In and still have him and win if. Like, I totally expect that All In next year is Will Ospreay beating whoever the AEW world champion is for his first world title, and he's a member of the roster. That's just my prediction.
That could be.
He's British. I mean, and he's like the biggest. I know that sounds stupid, but I mean, he's basically British. He's British. What the fuck? I mean, I think Zach is going to stick around in New Japan for a couple of more years because he's lived in Japan for a long time. Like, he did Noah, the dojo, all that for quite a while. Not that he couldn't go to AEW, but we got a little off topic, but you were talking about attendance, and you were talking about not doing as many shows in the United States. I would imagine over the next year, probably in most of the appearances we see of the New Japan people are in AEW matches. Like, they're not doing strong regularly in the United States. I think they have a show coming up in October, and it's the same weekend that AEW has their next pay-per-view, which I think is in Seattle. And Tony,
is that the Wrestle Dream thing?
Yeah, Tony announced that there will be New Japan wrestlers on the show because I mean they're already going to be like on the West Coast for another show. So,
I didn't realize that was. I heard about that. I didn't realize it was coming up quite that soon, though. That'll be cool.
So yeah, I mean, they just did 2 pay-per-views, and then they got another one in October, and then they got another one in November, and then I assume they're starting to move to monthly because they're going to end up on HBO Max or something like that, or whatever the Showtime streaming.
AEW, you mean?
I think so. That's just my opinion.
Well, that's been kind of the rumor for pretty much ever, like not long since they did the initial deal with Turner and started actually having success and everything. And it was just kind of more, one of the things holding it back was, I guess, they probably still needed some more buy-in from the Turner people at that point, but they also, they just didn't really have enough content at that time, because then they didn't own Ring of Honor at that point and all that.
Right.
That's all obviously since changed drastically, and I do think there's more than enough content on there to justify having like a streaming section or whatever on, because if you have HBO Max, it's kind of divided up into little categories anyway,
right?
With DC and whatever the hell else is on there, I don't know, but
Game of Thrones.
Well, yeah, that's like in the HBO category. It's like all the like.
I guess you're right. Okay, you're talking about like properties.
Yeah, so I could see AEW like having their own little category like that, I guess. But yeah, like beyond as far as like New Japan side of it, like I do think they do seem to want to have more of a presence in Australia, New Zealand, Philippines. That's apparently what the Tamashi brand or show or whatever is kind of geared towards. Okay. And it looks like with the Destruction shows that are coming up, that tour, they're actually going to start featuring a little bit more of that talent. There's a lot of TMDK on those cards, and some of the guys from TMDK that haven't necessarily been featured that much on quote unquote regular New Japan, like Bad Dude Tito is going to be there.
Yeah, he has a singles match on the show. Or no, he has a tag match.
I think there's a lot of tag.
He's matches on the show because I looked at the card today just out of curiosity and was surprised that his name was so high up. But now that you say that, that makes perfect sense. Probably like Robbie Eagles. Not that he hasn't been on plenty of New Japan, but he's not a regular.
Yeah, and I think what else? Fujita's on excursion to Australia right now. Kosei Fujita, looking really good, by the way. So I think that's where they're going to kind of focus their international presence, and they seem to be using Rev Pro as like kind of an unofficial, almost like their Rev Pro shows, but they advance New Japan storylines.
Oh, totally. Well, remember they used to have
that's not really new, but I think that's going to be kind of how they focus on like UK and Europe in that market.
No, that makes sense because Rev Pro. I mean, they don't have a lot of big Rev Pro shows that don't have at least one big New Japan star on them. I mean, what was it? A week after the G1 was over, they had the Rev Pro had a big Copper Box show where the main event was Ospreay and Shingo. That's
right. Yeah.
Had Shibata in a tag match. I know like ELP, all kinds of other people. I know ELP wrestled in England for years, so that was more going back, but I heard that was an incredible show.
It's honestly really clever because like there's this whole, it's basically, and again, this is stuff that's been going on for years with the whole Forbidden Door concept and all that, but there's just kind of this whole like partnership network between all the non-WWE promotions. And it's like, okay, it's almost like the territories again in a lot of ways. It's just international, and there's talent exchange and, rather than just saying like, okay, we're going to try to set up shop in Japan, we'll send a couple of guys over to the G1 or whatever. It's really interesting to see. I don't know, but and again, this is nothing new, but it's still kind of cool to see it all play out, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, if they made it more official, and they don't have to call it the NWA, or probably they couldn't call it the NWA, but if they had some kind of like overarching theme that encompassed like New Japan and Rev Pro and CMLL, and I know AEW works with AAA, so the Mexican relationships get really, really complicated apparently.
Yeah, that's another issue.
Yeah, that'd be a whole different story. But no, and if they had like one champion that traveled around, I think that'd be awesome. I don't know, logistically it probably wouldn't work because whoever that champion worked for exclusively would probably have him 90% of the time, and it would.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't truly work the way NWA used to, because like number one, like AEW is clearly the big dog in this equation.
Yeah.
And they can't like, I don't know. I mean, I'd be all for them sending MJF on tour to defend, and I could see them doing that like once in a blue moon or whatever, but it wouldn't just be like, you know, okay, Rev Pro gets MJF for a couple of months or whatever, and then he goes to Japan, or you know, that's never going to happen. But
No.
it is. It's kind of interesting to just see this like partnership channel between all the other promotions, though.
I mean, it's always good to see. I mean, even just seeing Noah and New Japan work together, because, I mean,
All Japan too.
Yeah, All Japan too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a huge
and Dragon Gate actually.
Oh, you're right, because what was it, the show they did? The charity show they did in Japan a couple of months ago at Tokyo Dome.
There's that, and there's also
too.
Okay, yeah, that, and there was also the guy Yoshiaki that was that wrestled in the N1 this year. I forget his name. Honestly, he was kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, I'm not
what
sure.
was the gentleman's name? Yeah, Yuki Yoshioka.
I've honestly never heard that name. What did he do? Oh, was he from Dragon Gate?
Yeah, he was the guy he was Dragon Gate's rep in the N1 this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, no, I watched the very small bit of the N1. It's over too. Adam watched that, so
yeah. More on that later. But yeah, let's as usual, we've gotten completely off topic. We were talking about the G1.
No. So let's look back.
You want to go night by night, or just overall impressions, or what?
Well, we'll do it. We'll gloss over each night. I mean, I'm not going to remember everything from any of these nights anyway. Right. But so if we kind of pick up where we left off, night 8, just looking at my list, matches that, you know, that was where we had Eddie Kingston and Ishii, which was awesome. I mean, I'll just go ahead and say that basically everything Eddie Kingston did during the G1 time period was awesome. I mean,
he had a very good tournament.
He had great matches. I mean, the video with Kawada was, you know, awesome. Apparently, I guess they did a Starcast this past weekend where Kawada actually flew in and he did a panel that was hosted by Eddie Kingston. And like, I'm sure there was a translator and everything, but it was like a huge hit apparently. Like, and it was one of those things where when Kawada was coming over, he was asking, I don't know, Conrad or whoever runs it, like, are people even going to show up to this? Like, do people know who I am? And like, when
Same
there's
thing
like,
Kobashi said, yeah,
exactly. That was the comparison. And then was just blown away by the fact that, oh no, you're not just known here, but you're a fucking legend from people watching on VHS tapes from the 90s, basically.
He might have been my favorite of the King's Road guys, of the 4 pillars or whatever.
I thought that his story arc was the most interesting overall. I think Kobashi was probably my favorite, just as far as like overall in ring, just because he was like the perfect wrestler. But Kawada and the whole, you know, coming up with Misawa, but always getting the short end of the stick, and then finally years later beating him. I mean, I'll never forget when we first saw the match where he beat him, and when that one dude jumped up in his chair and just ripped his shirt off. I was like, ah!
Yep, I remember that. That was the big Tokyo Dome match.
Yeah.
That was wild.
But so, yeah, I thought everything Eddie did was good. I don't think he had a bad match.
He really didn't. Yeah, even his match with Evil was one of Evil's not so bad ones.
I mean, hell, I'll be honest with you. Towards the end of the tournament, Evil's matches were getting better. Maybe it was because he was better in there with better opponents, but
yeah, actually, you know, to that point, I really, really enjoyed Evil versus Shingo. That was, and it was like 1998, like WWE Raw levels of interference and everything on both sides, but they had like the crowd was like going fucking nuts. It was great. So
that was on night.
That was one of the last ones.
Yeah, that was on night 15. And that was when they were getting down to the cards where it was only 4 G1 matches a night, which I will say getting through 8 G1 matches in a night, well, most of them were obviously good matches. There were very few matches I would say were below average or anything. It got to be kind of hard to get through, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not complaining because we got too much good wrestling to watch. But I mean,
I agree though. Like that's probably the one thing I would change about the format, which is it was a few too many people this time. I like the you know, the idea of the 4 blocks and having kind of like a semifinal playoff deal.
I did like that a lot. I thought that was a great touch because usually on night, 17 and 18 of the G1, it's like, yeah, there was like one or two people trying to still get into the finals, but for the most part, the matches are kind of inconsequential. But here it was like, no, if you're still in the G1 at that point,
right,
you keep winning, you're going to, make it to the finals. But no, so the match you just said, Shingo and Evil, that was night 15. That was basically at the height of me being so tired of Evil that was one of the few matches in the G1 that I skipped. I actually got up to that main event, and because the main event of the show before that was Ospreay and ELP, which was killer and great.
That was a great one.
And I was like, I knew the main event of the next night was Naito and Tanahashi, which I was like, that's going to have to be good in some way. And so I literally skipped it, and all I've heard is people be like, "Oh yeah, that was like Evil's best match in years."
Yeah, it honestly was.
I can watch it.
It was cool just because they finally did some like common sense kind of things about how they handled House of Torture. Like, there was plenty of fuckery and ref bumps and all that kind of stuff. And then, so at a certain point, Bushi, Tsuji, and Hiromu all came out and got Shingo's back and were like, giving him reinforcement. Yeah, exactly. It was just like, finally, the factions act like factions, not just the
we
heels.
actually do have friends. Yes.
Yeah. So like that was a nice thing to see. And it was just well done. Like, I mean, even with all the bullshit and the heel cheating and stuff, like, it actually was done well. Like, it wasn't just okay, you literally have to pretend Red Shoes is like brain damaged and unaware of what's going on and all that. Like, yeah, I definitely recommend going back and checking that one out.
And you're not the first person to tell me that, so I definitely will. I mean, in general, I think all the interference is awful, but you're totally right that when they have somebody in there that people care about, like Shingo, and they do stuff that's logical instead of Red Shoes standing there watching Evil wrap a chair around Shingo's neck and hit him with a chair. If you don't have to add a whole lot of logic, because we watch wrestling, we can suspend our sense of disbelief pretty easily. But I thought one of my biggest problems with the whole tournament was the referees looked like idiots throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, and initially, we talked about this on one of the other shows, where just initially they were putting it on like the younger referees
and I thought that was a valid excuse.
It was, but then they started doing it with Red Shoes and with Asami and all the other guys too, and then it just became kind of all right.
It became a joke. I mean,
we're
like, oh, it's playoff rules, but you can't say that now. It's like, no, the playoffs don't start until we're down to 8. I think they should just either say the G1 matches are no disqualification, or they could just actually have their matches in the ring. I mean, that's a novel concept.
Just tone it down a bit. That's all. Heels can still cheat, referees can still be incompetent, but they just not to the extent that they've done it with House of Torture the past couple of years.
And the other thing, if they're going to do it, which is fine, I think it should be one match on a show. Like, there were some of these shows where it was like 3 or 4 matches involving.
Because that's the thing. Because now they're like, you've got War Dogs kind of doing the same shtick, and so that to me is the problem. Is that it's like it's not unique to one group anymore. That's an addition to the problem. It's not just unique to this group that was designed for cheap heat.
Right.
But anyway, but okay, so going through all right, so I've actually got the actual matches listed up here. The only other thing that was really noteworthy for me on night 8 was Shane Haste going over Naito.
So I'm sorry, continue.
Well, yeah, just because obviously that wasn't the result anybody was expecting, but also just Shane Haste looked so good.
I thought it was funny when we talked last time. And I was
buried him.
Yeah, no, I totally buried him. And I was like, he hasn't looked good. I don't understand why they're in the tournament. And you were a couple of nights ahead of me, and you alluded to the fact that I might change my mind a little bit. Yeah. And then I saw the match with Naito and was like, holy shit. Okay. that's what he was referring to. And yes, that was a very good match. And I mean, that was clearly the high point for Shane Haste. And I mean, the dude's a good wrestler. I probably was burying him more than I should have because he's in there in the G1 with the
I wasn't expecting that from him either, you know.
No, I mean, I thought all he had was that orange hat, and then he would go out, and, and get his dick kicked in or whatever. And then no, he had a couple of good matches because what?
He really did. I thought he looked much better than Mikey as a singles wrestler.
Oh yeah, but Mikey looked like he was out there to kill himself. I mean, what? He headbutted Shingo Hinare the first night, put himself open, and that split open like 3 or 4 more times. He almost killed Hinare in that match by dropping him on his head.
Well, there was a lot of, and we're definitely something I want to talk about a bit later, but there was a lot of people working hurt towards and there always are in the G1.
I'm about to say that's very normal, but I was going to say it on Haste. The match that he had after the Naito match on night 10, it was him and Zach. And I thought that match was great too.
That was a good one.
I mean, obviously Zach is going to have great matches with everybody. And I guess Naito is, as long as he's, motivated, which towards the end of the tournament, he clearly was. But no, I thought I will have to take back all the crap I talked about Shane Haste last time, because immediately after that, he had some really killer matches. So I'm sure he's paying attention to this. So sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Shane.
Yeah. My bad. You can stop texting me about how angry you are.
Oh, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing though.
Yeah. Make sure to do it multiple times.
All right. So then moving on to night 9. The 2 standouts for me on night 9 were,
I thought that show, the ending of that show was killer because it's Sonata and Narita, and then Ospreay and Okada.
Yeah, and Ospreay and Okada was fantastic as you would expect. I mean, it lived up to the hype, but it was really, they told a really cool story of, Ospreay just going balls out, determined to get that. They had the whole thing where he was just saying like, I'm not sure I can do it in 20 minutes and all that against a guy like Okada. So he was just clearly kicking it into another gear.
Yeah.
And that it was just fantastic stuff.
And that was
Ospreay's just on fucking fire right now. Like, it's ridiculous. Obviously everybody knows who he is and all that, but I mean, he is so far and away the best worker in the world right now, in my opinion.
Like, not even close at this point. Yeah. As much as there's a couple other guys that I love just as much as them, this year, there's no competition for wrestler of the year or.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I thought it was cool because I think I saw the opposing interviews where Okada was basically like I've beaten him 6 out of 7 times or something. Cocky Okada is great when he's just like looking down on people. And Ospreay was on the other end. He was like, "Oh, I know I can beat him. I just don't know that I can do it in 20 minutes." And I thought the 20-minute time limit this year was a really cool addition. Only one of the times where I didn't like it was a match like that I wanted to see go more than 20 minutes.
I would never complain. I would never complain about Ospreay and Okada going 60 minutes, but I like that fast-paced kind of match. It reminded me of was it like match 3 between Kenny and Okada where they had the time limit and had to work it super fast.
And they did. They had 30 minutes to work with though.
Yeah, because that was a G1 match.
Right. They basically condensed their 45-minute match into like 25, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. And I mean, it was incredible. Like, that was one of the best G1 matches I've ever seen. So same concept. It definitely. You're right. I mean, it's a different wrinkle knowing that they can't go over 20 minutes, and they probably never had a singles match under 30. If you think about Ospreay and
probably not.
So I wonder if, because, a lot of the talk about Ospreay and was he going to resign? And I'm assuming his contract's not up until January because of the way the New Japan contracts work.
Yeah. That's how they always do it, apparently.
But about the time that he's beaten Okada clean, I was like, wow, I guess Ospreay's probably going to resign. But then by the end of the tournament, I'm like, now I'm not really sure. Not that he didn't get pushed super strong, because obviously he did, but I thought that match was good. I thought Sonata and Narita was awesome. I mean,
and I really liked Kiyomiya and Gabe Kidd too. That for me was where, because Kid has been a little rough around the edges. I mean, he still is. He's excellent in the ring, but his whole just psycho heel persona,
Yeah.
I feel like has been a little over the top at times. But I thought it was, I really liked that match. I thought Kiyomiya looked like a badass in it. It was probably about the last time he looked like a badass. That's something else I want to get into is kind of him getting buried by two companies. It's bizarre. But no, I love that match. It seemed I was kind of expecting Gabe Kidd to show up at one of the Noah shows recently because it seemed like that was what they were building towards with that. And actually, because I think was that match in Osaka? No, it was in Ota. Okay.
I'd say I cannot keep up with where the shows were unless they were in like Corkin or something. But no, that was a match where they had it was a double count out or a double.
Yeah, in a double count out, which is I always like seeing a finish like that you don't always see,
And like they both turned it up like it was like Psycho Kiyomiya versus Psycho.
It was very intense.
Gabe Kidd. Yes, that was. I wanted to see more of that match. That was definitely one of the better draws that I've seen. I like time limit draws. I should say draws I've seen where it was like a double count out or a double DQ or something. No, that was great and totally makes me want to see them have a match. I mean, really in Noah where Kiyomiya would be the super babyface and Gabe Kidd. I guess it's kind of weird. Like in New Japan, it's like Gabe Kidd is the heel, but he's talking shit about the other company. So the fans are probably like,
well, wait a minute. Fans were behind him.
Yeah, I know. They're like, we're New Japan fans, even though this guy probably, his character is that he seems to hate Japanese people. So, I mean, I thought Gabe was one of the people that leveled up in the tournament for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. And the total opposite of Kiyomiya as well. And it wasn't because it wasn't for lack of effort or lack of performance or anything. I mean, I thought he had really good matches, but just, skipping ahead a little bit from the shows and everything, but just absolutely bizarre to me that Noah would sign off on that on him. Well, number one, it's bizarre that they would miss out on the opportunity to have another chapter in his feud with Okada. Because there's doing a slow burn, and then there's just missing opportunities to, there's doing a slow burn, there's throwing cold water on it, and I feel like that's what's happening now. But yeah, absolutely bizarre to me that Noah would sign off on that to have, their star of the future end up looking weaker than Hikuleo and several other people for that matter.
I mean, he had all of his matches with Sonata and then with Tsuji, Narita, Umino, like all of those matches were good. I don't remember him having anything even close to a match that was even just average. But I remember when they first announced who was in the blocks, it was like, okay, well, it makes sense. Kiyomiya is here. He's in the same tournament as Okada. They have this long-term feud going. Why would he be here if not to further that? Or I was even saying, like, maybe New Japan's trying to recruit Kiyomiya to get him or something. I can't imagine that now. I mean, they made him look like shit. I mean, what was it? I guess, again, jumping ahead, but to, what was it? The match he had where basically he got eliminated from playoff contention when it was him and Narita on night 13. The match where had that awesome finish where Kiyomiya came rushing in at him and Narita hit that amazing belly-to-belly suplex right into a pin with a perfect bridge. And I thought that match was awesome. So, but I was 100% sure that Kiyomiya was going to win that match so that he could go on and advance. Like, I don't understand. And I have nothing against Hikuleo. I feel like he's made a lot of improvements over the last few years, but just looking at him, I don't even think he's going to be in New Japan in 2 years. Right? I mean,
I don't know.
He is going to come offering him money, and
maybe
I don't know if they're just waiting for him to fill out or get a little. I mean, I don't expect any of those brothers to still be in New Japan come 2 years from now.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I've just always, I don't necessarily hate on Hikuleo or anything, but I think his ceiling is like Tongaloa in terms of just like,
Frankly,
like
I think
Tongaloa like a couple of years ago, not Tongaloa now.
okay, yeah, I'd say, to be honest, Tongaloa is coming back from a blown out knee.
Yeah, and
Well, why
and
he would make his comeback in the G1, I don't know, but
that was not pretty.
Not one of the people. I'm going to ask you towards the end, who would you want to leave out for next year? And if so, who would you like to replace them with? So I think we're probably going to both. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was a clear,
he's a great guy, but
there was a very clear last place in terms of work rate in the tournament. The poor guy. I mean, the gif of him doing those little chop things he does now, that kind of went viral.
Oh, I missed that.
Oh God, he did in a few matches, and it was just like it was awful. It looked like just I don't know, just like the silliest, like most cartoonish thing you've seen. But let's see, just in terms, I'm looking through for any other standout matches kind of in that time frame. Because and actually, as long as we're on the topic of Kiyomiya, I get that Noah is playing little brother to New Japan, and nothing's going to change. All the wrestling politics in the world aren't going to change that or anything. But I would have thought that would have played out by like Okada just like more or less squashing him again in the finals. Like not a true squash, but like to the level he did at the New Year's show.
Right.
Where it was like, he had a couple of moments of like showing heart and stuff, but he was never really going to win, a threat to win or anything. But it just seems like, okay, like the trade-off, if you can even call it that, was, all right, your big star comes over and puts over a bunch of our guys in the G1, and we give you Ryohei Oiwa to go be his tag team partner for a while in Noah, which, no offense to Oiwa, I mean, he's going to be great one day too, but at this point, he's literally just stopped being a young lion. And yeah, like what am I missing here? And
I mean, with the commentary, especially towards the end, dude. And I think part of this is, I think Kevin Kelly is not long for New Japan.
Yeah, that's another talking about Gaijin who've gotten sick of going to Japan.
He straight up said in the last couple of days that he won't be with the company much longer because he said, quote, "My wife is tired of being at home alone all the time." And he's probably tired of making that trip too. And he's got a nice job waiting for him in AEW to where he could basically work one night a week and he doesn't have to go to Japan at all. So,
though I hear he's got heat in AEW already. That's
what?
Maybe another story. Something about he pissed off Ian Riccoboni. They've got like some long-term beef. I don't know.
Oh, I thought they were like genuinely friends.
I don't know. I don't remember all the details, and I think maybe his politics are getting him in a little bit of trouble with certain people too.
I did hear I've heard him make a couple of comments on Collision that were a little unexpected. Like he would say something, a veiled reference to something, to where, like, I don't remember what he said, but like he made a comment the other day that told me he's not a fan of the Young Bucks. I don't remember what he said, but it was pretty obvious. And it's like, okay, if you're not a fan, that's fine. But I mean, they are still executive vice presidents in the company and
title anyway.
Well, yeah. And I got the feeling that Kevin Kelly was very much on the CM Punk bandwagon. And if it was somebody on the other side, he was going to make that clear. But that could have just been because he was doing commentary for Collision, which was CM Punk's show until, a couple of days ago. So
who knows? I
was definitely in the G1, especially the shows that Kevin did by himself. He was an irritated man for some of those shows, like bringing up the low attendance, talking about how some of the shows they were doing out in the smaller areas were just like out in the middle of nowhere. And like, man, after Chase Owens did one of those shows with him, afterwards, he basically buried him and was like, "I'm doing the rest of this by myself. I don't want Chase Owens to come back." And then, of course, New Japan only has Chris do the shows that are in Tokyo. And then towards the end, they had Eddie Kingston do a couple of shows, which I think Eddie's great on commentary. So
he did a good job.
That was good. I mean, I watch him do anything right about now, but
it is going to be weird because I guess I guess Chris Charlton's just going to be flying solo for the foreseeable
I don't
future,
think
and
that would
that's
work.
yeah. I don't.
Chris has a lot of good things, and he's an encyclopedia, but Chris is really good when there's two other people doing the bulk of the talking, and Chris jumps in with some like incredible historical facts from time to time instead of just speaking in cliches like he's kind of started to do as I mean, I certainly don't think Chris is going anywhere. I think they're going to have to get another play-by-play guy to go with Chris at the very least.
Well, I'll just put it out there. Rocky, Gato, Obari-san, I'm here. I'm available.
Yeah.
I got a passport. I'm good.
I'm about to say I don't have to do it remote. I'll come over there. That's okay.
For sure. For sure.
I think Kevin Kelly said that he was still doing like Destruction and King of Pro Wrestling and Wrestle Kingdom, but it sounded like Wrestle Kingdom was probably going to be like his last show, just from a post I saw maybe 2 days ago. But
yeah, I think we probably saw the same one because that sounds about like what I remember.
Which, I mean, you could tell during some of those shows that he was, I mean, probably he's ready to go home.
Yeah, like honestly, it really did remind me kind of like JR before he started having like his health problems and when he was in his whole just cranky old man kind of phase, and just if he got bored or didn't like what he was seeing, he had no problem like not putting things over or just I don't know, like it's so weird because Kevin Kelly you just really strongly associate with New Japan at this point, but I mean you said it, he had his moments where he just seemed so disinterested.
And I always wonder, because he'll make comments like, clearly he doesn't like the fact that their commentary is seen as like secondary by a wide margin, though I totally understand why it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there was the one show where he was talking about like, he was like, it's 1,000,000 degrees in here. I'm going to take my jacket off. But considering that we don't ever get any on cameras, nobody's ever going to know anyway. So I always wonder like how much information Kevin Kelly and or Chris are actually given and how much of their commentary is like, they don't know where the stories are going. They're just talking from the perspective of somebody watching a sporting event. Because, dude, they were burying Kiyomiya to an incredible degree in the match I was talking about with Narita, where I assumed Kiyomiya was going to win in advance. They basically started out that match saying like, well, if Kiyomiya loses this, then this is going to be an epic failure for him and for Noah. And just the commentary made me think, okay, well, there's no way he's going to lose when they're shitting on him this bad. And then he loses. And then what? On the very last night, he's in the opening tag match of the show with Young Lions. And Kevin Kelly's basically saying like, well, Kiyomiya got a new asshole ripped by the Noah management because he did so shitty in the tournament that they let him go to. It's like, dang, it's like, not just booking him like shit, but like pouring salt in the wound and then sending him back like damaged property practically. And it's not like Noah is going to revive him and make him, or maybe they are, I don't know. I mean, thank God the guy's only like in his mid-20s and he's got a lot of time, but
it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. And then and again, like none of that, Noah's the little brother and everything, but still none of that happens without them signing off on it because like,
I can't imagine that anything could happen with their contracted wrestlers without them agreeing to it. And unless they think that New Japan is so high and above them that just having their top guy on their shows is going to bring back viewers, dude, people are going to see that and be like, why would I want to watch Noah when this guy is their best and he can barely hang with the guys that, granted, Umino and them are going to be massive stars, but the guys who have only come back from excursion in the last 12 months.
Well, and that's another big difference too, because that matters a lot in Japan too, just like the results and the win-losses and all that. Oh, yeah. So I mean, to your point, like it's, and they didn't even really necessarily portray it as like, well, but he showed fighting spirit and all that,
No, like they just basically made it look like it was an abysmal failure. So weird.
I don't know.
I would have assumed that there would have been something with Okada. I thought, even once I saw that he'd been eliminated, I was like, okay, well, if Okada doesn't make it to the finals, which he did, so it didn't matter. I was like, maybe they'll have like a 6-man on the last night where it's Okada and, I don't know, Goto and Yoshihashi versus Kiyomiya and 2 people. And Kiyomiya can get something on Okada. I'm not even talking about beating him. I'm just talking about at least do something to where he doesn't look like a total joke. And
yeah, like maybe he comes in and kicks him in the head again or something.
Exactly. Like that was so perfect the first time they did it, because to me, that match, I was like, oh, Kiyomiya and Okada, I've heard Kiyomiya say for a while he wanted a match with him. Well, then all of a sudden he kicked him in the face and everything got ramped up. And I was like, holy shit, I want to see this really badly.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And
it was.
It's just, it almost makes you wonder if at some point, whether it was Okada or whether it was somebody in New Japan Creative or whatever, that they just pulled the plug on the whole thing, which would be insane to me. But I guess stranger things have happened.
I've been assuming all year that Okada's match at Wrestle Kingdom next year was going to be against Kiyomiya. But right now, unless he's going to have unless he's going to go on a crazy hot streak over the next few months, there's no way.
No, I actually think, and jumping ahead to talking about the N1 a little bit, because this kind of just makes the whole thing more confusing to me. But so, at a certain point, Kiyomiya comes back to Noah during the course of that tournament. And obviously he's not in the tournament, but he was working, tag matches and stuff at the beginning of the show.
Right.
And they were having him get the pinfall in those matches quite a bit, clearly trying to recoup some of the heat he lost. But, which I mean, don't really think it did a lot in that regard, but like he got the pin over Ogawa in the match with him and Oiwa versus ZSJ and Ogawa. But
that was the last night, right?
Yeah, that was the co-main event or semi-main event or whatever you want to look at it as. But probably the more noteworthy thing to me was there was early on in the tournament, whichever show the main event was, Keno versus Inamura. Keno gets the win and he does the little go home promo to everybody in the crowd. And number one, it was just a great promo just because he's like Naito in that he's just so good on the mic that
he's got unique charisma.
Yeah, just total charisma. Even if you don't, understand Japanese like me, he's still like I don't, to be clear.
Right.
Like you're still interested in what he's saying and everything, and you want to go back and watch it with subtitles and everything. So I did that. And basically he went on this whole rant about how, he's like, Noah, all management wants to do is push Kiyomiya. He's their guy, but I'm here to fight for the real Noah. And I want guys like Inamura to come up and everything. So, and Keno and Kiyomiya have had kind of a long-term program anyway. They had that insane match last year at the Tokyo Dome they almost killed each other.
That was a great match too.
It was.
Scary suplex on the apron that I didn't. Jesus. The one spot where Kiyomiya almost died, I could have done without that, but.
Yeah, but I think they're going to do a rematch of that. I think not only are they, I think it's just there's that little seed that's been planted. And then also just the fact that seemingly whatever the plan was with Okada, it's either on the back burner for a long ass time or maybe it's done completely. I don't know.
It makes me wonder, did Kiyomiya piss off somebody affiliated with both sides and they decided
maybe it's just business. I don't know. I mean, but it still just seems like, okay, but why do all that shit in the first place?
I don't know. Yeah. What's the point of him even? I mean, we could talk about this forever, obviously, but
we could. But I mean, to me, it's one of the more intriguing parts of the G1 and just what's going on in pro wrestling right now in general. It just, I don't know. I mean, and I think even Japanese fans are pretty baffled by it. So I don't think it's just a cultural thing necessarily.
No, I don't know. It makes me wonder. Okada didn't win the G1, and he's not world champion. He's not going to be going into Wrestle Kingdom. If he's not having a match with Kiyomiya, then what exactly is he doing? It's not like they I mean,
Yeah,
Okada has gotten to the point where he's so high up the card that there's only a couple of people that can believably have a high profile match with him. And we know Naito is going to be tied up.
Right.
Sonata's going to be probably defending against Naito. I think they're probably going to do Omega and Ospreay 3, especially if Ospreay is on his way out the door.
Yep.
So then Okada and
not Tanahashi.
No. Love the man to death, but don't want to see that as a singles match at the Tokyo Dome.
Not at this point, no.
I mean,
who else is there, you know?
Like, I mean, he could have awesome matches with Shingo or something like that, but there's no story there, and Shingo's not currently pushed to that level, so.
And even then, you're talking about like the third match from the top of the card, which is kind of, I can see. I mean, you know, I could see that being the kind of thing Okada doesn't really get up for, you know.
Yeah.
Like that match he had with Jericho at the Tokyo Dome. That was like, you know, that was not like it was terrible or anything, but it was very underwhelming.
It was very paint by numbers.
Kind of.
Just fill in the blanks instead of coming up with anything overly creative.
And, you know, even if like maybe we're totally wrong and they pick up that program again at some point and they run that match at Wrestle Kingdom, even if they did that, like it still just seems like a huge opportunity was missed not to have something happen between them and the G1. That just will never make sense to me.
Like they didn't even have to have a singles match with each other.
No, I mean, just some kind of interaction.
Some kind of interaction, but it was as if it was as if they completely forgot that the other one existed. I don't know. I don't get it.
So, okay, one final comment on that, and then we'll move on because I know you know we've kind of dwelled on this a bit, but I'll contrast that with the way that Noah handled Yuma Anzai in the N1 tournament. So he's like the star of the future young boy for All Japan that got brought into the N1.
I'd say I've not heard that name, but okay.
Well, and so he finished like dead last in his block. I think he got like 1 or 2 wins in the whole tournament. So I mean, they very much like, you know, he was portrayed as being down the ladder and not on the same level as everybody else, but they portrayed him as having balls, as having heart, having, you know, Budo, fighting spirit, all that. You know, they did right by him. You know, it was one like that was an example of like they built him up. They did All Japan a solid and everything. And that's just, you know, and he's still like, even though everybody in All Japan seems to know that like big things are in his future, he's still very much green and very much a rookie. And they didn't have to, you know, like they did a good thing for All Japan there.
Right.
And then contrast that with literally Noah's ace of the future that New Japan essentially took a big shit on. Just wild.
I mean, he couldn't get past Hikuleo basically to make it into, and I hate to shit on Hikuleo again, but
yeah, he put over Hikuleo and he put over Narita, who I love Narita, but clearly a distant third place of the Three Musketeers.
Yeah, I mean, did Kiyomiya, his match with Yota Tsuji, that was on the very first night, right? And Kiyomiya won that match clean because remember he had a pretty good start to the tournament. Well, here,
he did
right here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. He had like it was you know as they say, a tale of 2 tournaments because it seemed like they were. That's what makes me kind of wonder if something happened or somebody changed their mind or something because it did seem like they were taking him more seriously in the beginning.
When we talked last time, we were still, now granted, we had half the tournament left, but we were talking about Kiyomiya has had good matches. He's been pushed well. He's in there with the young guys who are the guys of the future, plus the world champion, Sonata. I mean, I thought that block in general was booked really well with Sonata as champion. You know, he beat all the young guys, but you know, he did a promo. This is one of the few ones that I saw that was translated afterwards where he was like, look, I beat all these guys. They're young and they're not at my level yet, but they're getting there. And he basically put them over huge in defeat, saying like, they are the future. I was able to get by now, but in a few years, I don't know if I can do that. It's like, he certainly didn't say anything about Kiyomiya, probably because he realized if he had, he would have looked like a chump too for
Maybe they were trying to woo him, get him to come over and jump ship and stuff, and then at some point they realized he wasn't doing it, and who knows?
Pull the plug. I mean, that would be
I don't think I
logical.
don't think they would change the booking for the tournament like that drastically though midstream though. Like that you only do that if somebody gets injured, Like
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I don't.
it's just so weird.
It's very strange. I mean, I think it could be a few years from now when we might still be saying like, remember that? That didn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, quite possibly.
But
finally moving on.
yeah, no, that's okay because I wanted to talk about that. That was one of the
Definitely.
biggest takeaways from the whole tournament. I don't think anybody could deny that. But
Yeah.
so let's see. On night 10, that was actually, to me, that was Mikey Nichols' best match, and that was against Eddie Kingston. It wasn't like anything killer. I heard some other people say that Mikey's last match with Ishii was his best one, and I thought that was good too. But maybe that's just because Ishii doesn't have a neck that he could get dropped on.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to. I don't remember either of those matches like super distinctly, but I do seem to remember the match with Ishii being.
It was good.
Probably his best effort. I mean, Ishii will bring a great match out of anyone, of course. He's one of those guys. But still, the match with Hinare, and you've alluded to it earlier, that will be the memorable one just because it was fucking insane.
I didn't even watch the whole thing because it just fell apart and just I got scared and was like, I like Hinare. And Hinare is another guy who I think leveled up big time.
Oh, absolutely. He's like the breakout star Ospreay was my MVP of the tournament, but if you had like a breakout rising star kind of award, it would probably be Hinare for me.
I would totally, I mean, in every way, he got some big wins. He didn't have any bad matches, and he had some awesome matches. He had a whole new presentation with his hair looked horrible that he had before. So the shaved head looked great. Obviously the Mataora. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, but
I think that's about right. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
face tattoo.
That doesn't get much cooler than that. Apparently that's, I'm not getting a face tattoo, but that's not a huge culturally important thing for, my family. So.
Yeah. Well, you're not from Florida, so.
Oh, fair enough. Well, no, wouldn't that be more of a neck tattoo?
It's or
the neck tattoo that like creeps up the side of the face.
Yeah, that's a good point. Probably
so not a Cody, more like I don't know.
More like a giant gun or something. I don't know.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I like basically that group C or D, whatever it was, like you could throw in any combination of Shingo, Eddie, Ishii, Hinare, or Tama Tonga, and you knew it was going to be just a throw down, like hard hit. And
yeah, it was basically like the never open weight title division where it was
the BMF division.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like any combination of those five. They all had really good matches.
Yes, David Finlay too. He was. I don't know if you mentioned him. He's actually the never open weight champion, and he won the block.
Yeah, well, he had a couple of decent matches. I talk about a disappointment. There was, I forget which night it was. I guess I could look it up here. But whichever show that the main event was him and Evil. And just another opportunity for them to explore the whole Bullet Club split thing, but decide not to do it. And honestly, a pretty dull match from what I remember.
That was the second match that I skipped. That and the Evil match with Shingo. So those are the only two matches of the tournament I did not watch because I just wrote down no rating. So that means it must, I didn't even try to watch it.
Yeah, no worries there. No worries there.
I thought Finley's match, this is not going to be a big surprise, but his match with Ospreay that he got eliminated was incredible. But
it was,
it wasn't anywhere near Ospreay's best match. So,
yeah, and it wasn't so much to do with Finley, but
right.
I don't know. He's as interesting as the newest incarnation of Bullet Club is. He's the least interesting part of it.
I was about to say, at this rate, after watching the tournament, I would about rather see Gabe Kidd as the leader. Again, he's still working out the character stuff, and I mean, there were a few times where he exuded, like when he went into the crowd, I a few times worried that he was going to get caught up in the moment and do something and get himself in trouble. Like he had that aura of danger. Like I would compare it like to like Nakajima in ring, but in the crowd, where I was afraid that Gabe Kidd was going to throw a chair and like hit a kid in the head with it or something.
Yeah, I mean,
his in-ring work is tight as hell, and I mean, he's obviously got so much more experience than all the other people in his graduating class, because he had already wrestled for what, like 8 years or something before he even joined the dojo.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree though. I think he seems like the one who should be the leader at this point. And I don't know. I mean, they're hell bent like on putting over Finley as leader and everything. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but
no,
inevitably somebody will take over the reins of Bullet Club, whether Finley goes to WWE or AEW or not. Which he may well at some point. That might actually be better for him, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe he goes with Bullet Club Gold, reunites with Juice.
I must say, I don't even understand what is Bullet Club and what isn't anymore. I mean, I guess, I mean, to be fair, in AEW, I've thought that Jay and Juice have actually done a lot of really good stuff. And I mean, their tag matches, it goes without saying, you know, with FTR have been awesome and stuff like that. But
I mean, at this point, you kind of have to think of War Dogs as like just an entirely new stable. And the only, you know, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but like the only reason Bullet Club is they're still called that is just for the brand and the merchandising and all that.
Oh yeah.
You know, so, but yeah, I mean, it's still, they're still a bit rough around the edges, but that's easily one of the more intriguing storylines going right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, Gabe Kidd, I feel like as far as his in-ring, like he can go in there with anybody in the entire company and have a great match. I mean, he's ready, basically.
Yeah. And he can brawl too. I mean, he finally got that down over the course of the tournament too, where it you know, because they were doing the whole time, he'd been doing the whole thing of just ambushing people while they're making their entrance and stuff. And I don't know, I can't quite articulate what changed about it, but initially it was just less convincing initially. And by the end of it, he had kind of gotten it down to a science, and, you know, almost looked like Suzuki out there in terms of just like the crowd brawling and using chairs and guardrails and stuff. Like, that actually, I think, is one of the reasons that his match with Kiyomiya was so good for me.
Yeah. Was it before or after we spoke last time that he had the match with Yota Tsuji, where the Yota Tsuji, who is his brother, came down and was I think that was before.
That happened since our last recording. Yeah, that was pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, that was on.
That was one of the later shows. Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that. That was
on night 13. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, so, at that point, Kidd had been jumping everybody from behind. So I was waiting for somebody to be coming out like backwards, waiting for them or something. And no, guy comes out. You assume it's Yota Tsuji. Gabe Kidd comes out and beats the shit out of him. And then all of a sudden, Yota Tsuji comes down. And so apparently that was Yota Tsuji's younger brother.
Yeah, that was his Eric Angle.
Yes. And apparently, if you look him up on IMDb, he has quite the list of movies and shows that he has been a stunt double for, like all over the world.
It's pretty wild.
Obviously, he looked almost exactly like him. I just loved how while he's getting the shit just totally beat out of him, Tsuji's just like slowly sauntering down to the ring like, oh, he'll be fine. I'll get there in a minute.
You know, maybe that's a good dance partner for Okada at Wrestle Kingdom.
I said it last time. Yota Tsuji is ready to take off and be a star. He doesn't need any more seasoning or anything. He's got the it factor, or whatever you want to say, on top of the fact that he is just very, very good. And so if they went that way with the program, I would totally be down with that.
Well, here's skipping way ahead, but here's what I see happening, and I suspect that you'll agree with this, but we'll see. You're usually better at predictions for New Japan than I am, but okay, everybody knows Naito's going over at Wrestle Kingdom. He's finally going to get his Tokyo Dome moment, do the roll call, all that shit. But I think at some point after that, not like New Year's Dash necessarily or anything like that soon, but at least by Dominion, Tsuji will beat him for the title.
You think so?
I think so, yeah.
So I was either thinking that or Tsuji would win the G1 next year because, I mean, he's totally ready. And I got the feeling that, especially
when he wins at Wrestle Kingdom 25.
Yeah, but I don't know if Naito would still be champion by then. He could.
Oh, I doubt that. Yeah.
Probably. I don't picture Naito having the belt for a year, but it would be logical for him to go and beat Naito for that belt. I do think he will win that G1 and go on and do that if you aren't correct and he doesn't take it at Dominion. Because remember, he main evented Dominion this past year. So it would – he main evented against Sonata, and then next year he could main event it against another LIJ guy who he was quote unquote.
That's what I'm thinking. You know, that's the –
no, it would make sense. And I don't think there's any way Tsuji's not world champion within the next like 24 months.
I think that's fair assessment.
He's clearly that far above the other two, in my opinion. And I really like Umino and I really like Narita, but Tsuji he wasn't on my radar at all until he came back. And all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, when did he get to be so good?
He's just fantastic. He really is.
I mean, clearly he's a natural at it with his, it's not like he's been wrestling but a few years.
Well, and my big question too is where does Sonata fit into things long term? Because it's, you know, this year has been he's been one of the big stories of this year too. Just the small little changes he made to his gimmick that just made all the difference. The fact that just 5 guys somehow got over, even though it's
just 5 guys.
They're just 5 guys. That's literally all there is to the stable, and yet everybody loves them somehow. But my big question with him is that, you know, so the word around the campfire is that he tore his bicep during the G1. And so he's gonna have his one like mandatory, you know, in between Wrestle Kingdom title defense against Evil. And probably Sonata's gonna go over on that, but there is kind of this thought that seems to be out there that Evil's an insurance policy for Wrestle Kingdom, just in case like his arm is just in such bad shape that he can't push through it, because you would still, you know, Naito's going over either way. And you still have the, you know, the storyline of Naito finally getting his complete revenge against Evil that way too.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really hope that's not what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the Wrestle Kingdom main event that I don't think anyone wants to see, you know, but I can see the logic if things go a certain way.
Oh, totally. Like, I don't know when Sonata hurt his bicep. Apparently it was like about midway through the tournament. So
yeah, because he wrapped it all up. Like
he worked multiple matches with it.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think he's going to go and get like surgery on it so that he's good by October. He's probably going to work the whole time up to that. It's just, I think it's a matter of whether or not it gets worse. I think you're right. And I've heard other people say this, like if there was going to be any chance of Evil ever being champion again and going into Wrestle Kingdom as champion, this would be it. And it would be because Sonata was too fucked up to be able to, because I don't think New Japan's ever putting the belt on Evil on purpose ever again, unless he is dramatically changed, but that's totally possible. I mean, they may just be booking it knowing that, hey, everybody, it's so obvious it's going to be Sonata and Naito. At least if Evil is the one in here, there can be a little bit of doubt because the storyline would work that way as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, probably that's the way it plays out. I just hope that, you know, number one, that Sonata's okay long term, and that number two, like he's able to put on, you know, a match worthy of Wrestle Kingdom and worthy of the, you know, wrapping up the storyline with Naito and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sonata has definitely had a good year. I'm glad that they went and tried somebody new as champion. but I don't see Sonata as like he got himself up to a top guy level. He's a champion and he's doing well, but I don't see him as a long-term top of the card guy. I feel like he's somebody, he'll drop the belt and he's not going to ever like plummet down the card, but he's going to go back to where he'll get his title shot every now and then because he can get built up very quickly, but he's not one of the people on the show that is focused on because I just don't see it. I mean,
I guess like, I mean, I see why you'd say that and everything. Because it's, yeah, and we've talked about this before too. It's just kind of like if you are giving somebody the main event spot or the world champion spot, you're taking it away from other people too. And I think with all the, Tsuji and all the other people that are going to be coming up in the mix, in combination with people like Okada, who still have a good few years in that position. Maybe there isn't just enough room, but this is another example of why they never should have gotten rid of the Intercontinental title, because I mean that's something that kind of upper mid card area that seems tailor made for a guy like him in his spot.
I could see that belt being brought back. I mean, again, I don't have any idea why they got rid of that. They have so many titles that they don't need. That was not one of the ones that I thought fell into that category. But
yeah,
no, yeah, if Sonata was Intercontinental champion, I mean,
he's a perfect Intercontinental
that'd
champion.
be perfect because it's like I don't picture him as like a never open weight champion. One, he doesn't really fit that style anyway. But again, I still see him as a notch below world champion. And again, I don't think he will be world champion past January of next year. But I don't know. I mean, there's also a lot of time between now and then. He might completely catch fire. And by the time January rolls around, him and Naito might be like a killer main event that people are. I mean, I'm looking forward to that.
I am too. I don't mean to.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be negative about it, but
at the level of Okada, Naito, people like that, and I just don't think he's going to get to that point personally.
Well, historically, Okada's been the one who's pulled that like kind of 5-star level performance out of him. Like, I mean, he's had good matches against other people, but I feel like every one of his best matches has been against Okada.
Yeah, and totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't, him and Naito, they'll go balls out at the Tokyo Dome and everything, but I question if they have the chemistry required to have like a true classic,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
we'll see.
That's why I think they'll have Omega and Ospreay on the show as like.
Yeah, and they'll probably steal the show like it did last year.
Be the crazy awesome match, but I mean your main event still needs to. I mean, Naito is going to go out there and, I mean, let's face it. I was beginning to think that Naito was so beat up that he couldn't perform at that level anymore. And on the last 2 nights of the G1, I was like, I stand corrected.
Well, that was another. Him and Tanahashi, their match was insane. Which I think was actually the last match of group play.
It was.
That was the main event it's still
night 16.
Yeah, and I mean it wasn't. I mean it's still. Tanahashi's clearly not his old self, and frankly, neither is Naito. I mean, he's still excellent, but I mean they put on a fantastic match, and it was also very clear that just like I think that was just intentionally done insofar as like, okay, we whatever else is going on with us physically and everything, like we got to go nuts for this one.
Yeah. I think Tanahashi saw that as like his G1 main event because it was his last match in the G1. It was against Naito, the guy who was eventually going to win. Mm-hmm. I mean, he did Ace's hot, to the floor, didn't he? I mean, that was the first time he had done that, or thankfully the only time he did it during the tournament.
Yeah, and did the frog splash several times. I mean, that was an amazing match. That really was. I was surprised it wasn't getting more love on the internet than it. I mean, it was getting a bit, but I was blown away by it, and I was, I was expecting more reactions like mine, I guess.
Yeah, I when I think about that, I do think like New Japan is in such an interesting spot where they've had the same guys having absolutely killer matches for 10 years. I mean, again, Okada's still got a ways to go, but Tanahashi is, I mean, the body can only withstand so much. He's going downhill. Naito, again, I think he's going to win the title again, and he's going to have a reign for 6 months or something. And then after that, I think he's going to start to get phased down.
I think it's definitely his last title reign.
Oh, yeah. And
yeah.
like, who's the other person I'm thinking of? I mean, there's some of these guys that have been the New Japan top guys that make these G1s good are getting older. And it's like they have the best crop of young guys coming up at the same time. So there does seem to be like a large discrepancy between like the star power of the two. I almost feel like this is the last G1 where they were going to end up focusing on the generation that people look at as the New Japan stars of the 2000s or whatever you want to say. And like next year, it's going to be much like, I don't picture having a G1 final like Okada and Naito next year. Next year, I picture it being something like maybe one of those two, but mixed in with a Yota Tsuji or something like that to really kick off the idea that, hey, these other guys have been incredible for a long time, but they're getting into their mid-40s. You know, Ishii's about to be 50. These are the guys who are going to lead the company into the next generation or whatever you want to say. And
the Reiwa era.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, that apparently they hate being called. I don't know. That's very strange, but
I kind of get it. It's like because the AEW guys hate being called the Pillars and everything. Like,
I know it just sounds very contrived. I guess I don't know, but obviously they wouldn't have given.
It probably is to a degree, but yeah, I know what you mean.
If they weren't giving them a massive push throughout the rest of their career, they wouldn't be doing it. So obviously, it's a good thing for them. But
no, I think your read on the overall situation is spot on, though. Like, I mean, it's definitely. The next year or two in New Japan is going to be kind of a passing of the torch to the new generation.
And there might even be some more lower attendances because, I mean, when you're switching from one generation to the next, you know, sometimes it takes a while for the fans to see those new younger guys as the top guys, especially when the top guys are still there.
Yeah.
You know, yes, they're slowly getting phased down, but I think about it, and this is my best comparison point, but look at like WWF in 1998, you know, Stone Cold, Mick Foley, The Rock become massive stars. Well, the stars that had been there, with the exception of The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels is gone, Bret Hart is gone. You don't have those top guys that are being replaced there as like a cloud over top of the new guys. It was almost like a clean slate. And I don't want Okada and Naito and Tanahashi to suddenly disappear at all. But it's harder for that new generation to truly get over when the old generation is still actually there.
That's
unless
true.
that new generation is going out, that older generation is going out of their way to put over the new guys, which I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of that next year.
Yeah, I can see it probably makes sense for everybody to, because that goes back to Tsuji, you know, going over on Naito at some point next year. I mean, like I feel like that could happen to the degree that maybe Tsuji takes over LIJ, or maybe he starts his own stable or something like that. I think it has to be more than just you know, he beats him in a tough match. You know, maybe it starts out like that, but I think like they need to do something to really put the stamp on it like that.
I agree.
And I think I think they're going to do something like that with Umino too at some point. And
Umino's still got some work to do.
He does. But I think like he's just so clearly got the company behind him, like in a way that, like I think Tsuji is getting all the attention and the push that he's getting, like 90% on merit. And that's not to say that like Umino is just having things handed to him or anything,
Right.
but I do feel like out of that generation of young lions, Umino was the one who was flagged early on by the company. It's like, yeah, he's the guy, you know?
Yeah.
So it's going to take him like it would take him just really dropping the ball for them to give up on him or whatever you want to look at like that. But Suji is just undeniable with how over he is and how he's putting it all together. But then at some point too, presumably next year, but you're going to have guys like Uemura coming back.
I guess
Sooner or later, Kosei Fujita is going to come back. Fujita in particular is somebody that to me just has star written all over it. And they seem to, I think the company understands that too. You know, even when he was in his young lion phase, they were treating him a little bit differently. Even
he was getting a small push. I mean, he was getting pushed beyond that of a young lion. Yeah,
exactly. And I've heard too that they've
goes a long way.
They've kind of started realizing that they do need to change that up a bit.
Speed people along.
Yeah, just push them along a little bit further. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of guys coming up. Bolton Oleg, I know somebody that we were going to talk about eventually. Who knows what his ceiling is, but I think they seem to have like short-term plans for him.
Oh, he's going to be fast-tracked, no doubt about it.
I mean, he's getting a title shot in a couple of days, a few days.
Yeah.
You know, so there's big changes ahead for sure.
I'm very curious to see him actually have a singles match with that match with Zach is this upcoming weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Friday. And I think that's going to be very like what's the term I'm looking for? Like that's going to look like a grappling exhibition more than it is a pro wrestling match, I think. Probably. And I'm here for that. I'm good with that, but it just makes sense. Like you've got a guy who's a Greco-Roman Olympic level grappler going up against a guy who's got, you know, all the catch can credentials that Zach does. So yeah, just let them roll around and crank each other's legs and shit, right? You know?
Yeah, and the fact that Bolton is green as a wrestler won't be as obvious because of what they're doing. It's not like he's going to be diving off the top rope or, you know,
I'm thinking it's going to be a bit like in the 80s when they brought in all those Soviet guys.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because, and I can't take full credit with this, but someone I heard earlier today was saying that they need to turn, is it Bolton Oleg or Oleg Bolton?
So, okay, funny you say that because that's been throwing me off too. And I know, names. It's kind of like they're like certain parts of Russia or something. They do like the Japanese thing where they say the family name first. I don't know exactly what the rules are, but I remember like in Pride back in the day, sometimes they would call Fedor Emelianenko Fedor.
Yeah, because for a while I didn't know what his name was, and you know, eventually everybody knew who he was. But I remember at one point thinking, okay, Fedor is his first name,
right?
When it was not. But no, so I want Oleg Bolton to get pushed. I want him to wear the singlet, the red singlet with the hammer and sickle on it, and be
that's not going to happen for a
Salman Hashimakov Jr.
Well, he's I believe Kazakh for one thing. He's from Kazakhstan. So if he reps anybody's flag, it's going to be that. But
that's okay.
Yeah, with all the shit going on in the world right now, they're not going to.
I guess you can't really have a Russian heel right about now.
Nuts. Well, I mean, you certainly can't have a Russian baby face, that's for sure.
Well,
but yeah. Kazakhstan is technically neutral, but sort of aligned to Russia, I think, or something. So
I don't even know.
Yeah, but they're going to steer clear of all that shit. Is the point I'm trying to make.
I think it'll be very interesting to watch him develop because
he's just a big motherfucker, dude. Like he is,
dude. And what's the other guy's name? Oscar Lobe. Wasn't he a basketball player or something?
He looks like he could be a basketball player.
I mean, isn't he like about 6'7"? But like he's young enough that it's like he hasn't really filled into his frame yet, and he almost looks like like a golden retriever puppy that's got like the long legs and hasn't quite figured out how to move around properly and is a little awkward.
That I'm pretty sure Kevin Kelly described him that way at some point, didn't he? That sounds like something.
I probably got that from Kevin Kelly then. Yeah.
I don't know. He's been breaking Oscar's balls like ever since he's been like a young boy at ringside and stuff. But no, I mean, it's, you know, there's it's so rare that they have a young lion who sucks, So I mean, I'm sure he'll turn out to be okay. I've I guess I've seen him like in a few like the preliminary matches and stuff, but I can't
I
say.
honestly have not. I pretty much skipped all of them in the G1, but I very much want to see some of these guys, like not just them, but Oiwa and guys like that. I want to see, because again, they're eventually going to be a part of this generation, like Umino and them. They'll just be the next iteration of it. But
Oiwa is full on excursion in Noah at this point. Like they've given him, he's got actual ring attire. They're letting him, do an expanded move set and stuff.
Got a haircut.
Yeah, I got a haircut, which I disagreed with that. I mean, he should have kept the mullet, but yeah. So he's going to have his chance to baby bird fly from the nest and all that. But yeah, I don't know that I've seen enough of Loib or the dude with the afro to really have much of an impression on either of them. But and I also feel like, and maybe this is just kind of a result of how everything shook out during the pandemic and everything, but like, there was that kind of prolonged period where Gabe Kidd, Yota Tsuji, and Uemura all like really got kind of a spotlight and really like had a chance to just,
they had like their mini tournament during the G1 that year.
They had that
the undercard.
Yeah. No, they had that, but they also just had like, they would get like a one-on-one match with like Kojima or somebody like that, and I feel like there hasn't really been as much opportunity lately for the young lions to do stuff like that. It's been just multi-man tags and stuff where they're not getting quite as much ring time.
No, I honestly think that those three are as far along as they are because of that time period, because they were able to be focused on so much.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, they were having matches with veterans and getting invaluable experience that right now, you're going to maybe be in an 8-man that involves these guys, but you're not literally working hands-on one-on-one with Yuji Nagata or whatever.
Right.
And like,
well, I think it's that. And I think it's also Tsuji and Uemura both had really productive excursions as it's turned out,
I mean, I keep hearing people say that they don't even know if Uemura is coming back.
I've heard people say that, but I don't think I think it's more just like that he's really clicking.
Okay.
Like he's under a New Japan contract from what I understand. And like, that's not expected to change, but, the fucking thing you probably didn't have a chance to see it, but the tag team he started with Joe Hendry in Impact, that is fucking hilarious. Like you got to look up that entrance, man. It was hilarious stuff.
So what is Uemura's character and Impact?
Well,
what is his presentation? He's not presented as a
comedy basically, but like he started a tag team called Joya with Joe Hendry, so Joe plus Yuya Joya,
right?
And they have like this big choreographed like dance thing they do for their it's hysterical. I was laughing my ass off watching it.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
And that but the funny part of it is, do what?
You sent it to me?
I texted it. I'll text it to you later on. But
okay, I'll check that out tonight,
or just look it up on YouTube or whatever. But it's and the fun. Okay, so the funniest part about it though is like, Joe Hendry's just like going full on comedy act, and Yuya's clearly a little bit self-conscious about it, but like he's still like going through it, and he's
that's what excursions are for. Get you out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. But it's like somehow it just adds to it, and it's very silly and just very like in a good way. It's big thumbs up for me. I gotta give Impact more of a chance.
That's funny because I think of Joe Hendry, at least the matches I've seen, he was just a very straightforward, kind of a British strong style kind of guy who didn't have a whole lot of a character. So when you start saying that he's doing that seems totally different from what I expected from him too.
I'm no expert on him, and I definitely have not seen much of his work, but my understanding is that like at some point, maybe in the last couple of years, he's shifted to more of a funny character. I don't know though.
Maybe he just realized that his body wasn't going to hold out forever as a serious wrestler, and he decided I can add 10 years onto my career if I become slightly funny.
Well, maybe, and we'll see how long before it all gets kind of stale and old. But right now, Joya is over and definitely funny for me.
I haven't watched Impact in a long time, but I do continually hear that they're doing good things. And like, if there wasn't an AEW or a New Japan to watch that I actually wanted to keep up with, I could see myself checking in on it from time to time.
Yeah, me too. And I just get discouraged though, because it'll be, I'll hear good things they're doing. I'll hear, Eddie Edwards does this and that and all that. And then it's like, oh, but then, Bubba Ray Dudley came and did something. And then Tommy Dreamer did something. And it's like, for Christ's sake, why are they even in wrestling still,
Yeah.
But there's lots of old guys that just, that's nothing new, I suppose, but
no,
kind of a recurring theme in American and Japanese wrestling, these old dudes who just can't quite let go.
Well, I mean, that's been a theme in Japanese wrestling.
Yeah.
Forever. I mean, at least in that.
And in some cases it works. Like, again, not to go off topic from Japanese stuff, but I mean, Jeff Jarrett's been doing good stuff in AEW somehow.
Yeah.
Which blows my mind to say out loud, but
and he looks exactly the same that he did 20 years ago.
Well, I mean, not
for the most part.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's, that's Doc
Cosmetic.
Sampson's helping with that, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Thinking back to as long as I've watched Japanese wrestling, it's not unusual to have 5 guys on the undercard that are 60 years old. Now they're going to be in like 8 and 10 man tags where they're not going to be exposed, but they're there because they have name value for 40 some years. Whereas
you're right.
Unless you're a Sting or a Chris Jericho, you're not probably going to still be in any kind of a prominent role at that age in the United States.
Wasn't one Fujiwara like literally wrestled till he was like 70 or something?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. I mean, he had like the Zack Sabre style, not to that degree, but he could very much work a style where, he wasn't bumping all over the place or doing crazy shit. It was good and it was logical and it was technical, but yes, he was literally he was a senior citizen doing these matches. He had his own promotion forever. And I think he was the top guy. Fujiwara Gomi or something like that. I don't know. That might've been all the way back in the 90s when he was only in like his 50s or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Spring chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, so, okay, let's talk about though, for me, and I think for most, if not all people, was the match of the tournament, the semifinal between Ospreay and Naito, because holy shit.
Yes. So
what a match.
I thought that the first night of the playoffs, just to kind of set the stage, first night of the playoffs, I thought that the Zack and Okada match, that it was a main event, I thought that match was incredible. And I was surprised, kind of like you said with Tanahashi and Naito, I didn't feel like that match got a lot of love online. I heard everybody raving about Finlay and Ospreay from that show, which was good, but nowhere near as good as Zack and Okada.
Totally agree.
In my opinion, again.
No, I agree on both points.
And that was also when Evil beat Sonata to obviously earn himself a title shot in October and start the people wondering, oh my God, is Evil going to actually go to the G1 finals or something like that?
Yeah. And, I rewatched that match recently.
That's not a bad match.
It wasn't bad, but like I rewatched it just because I honestly, I couldn't remember if it was that match or the match with Shingo that was really good for Evil. But yeah, I think that's when Sonata's arm was like really getting bad because I don't know, it just seemed like he was holding back a bit and everything, and I feel like it didn't go like quite that long either, especially for like a playoff match or a semi playoff match, whatever you want to phrase it as. But
I mean, half the match they're doing, the House of Torture bullshit anyway. So Sonata could very well be hidden in that match. And I didn't expect Sonata to make it to the Final Four anyway. I just figured he was going to get knocked out in that first round. Do what?
I thought he might, like in the beginning anyway, just because he's the champ, you got to book him strong and all that.
But I mean, he was booked so strong through the blocks. He only he didn't lose.
I think you're right. Yeah,
I think he had one or two draws, but he didn't.
Yeah, he was actually the only one who went undefeated in the whole group stage.
Right. And then, I mean, he lost to Evil, who, they have a story that goes back a while. So I didn't hate that outcome. I don't care for the fact that Evil's getting the title shot, but we already talked about it. Actually does make sense that he is.
Yeah.
With the whole, those three guys formerly of LIJ are kind of the ones revolving around the title picture going into Wrestle Kingdom. But yeah, no, so I didn't mean to change the subject. You were talking about the next night where we had Naito and Ospreay, and dude, I watched that. It's only a few nights ago. It was late, and I was probably about, getting close to falling asleep. And that match started, and like they kicked it into high gear quick. And
it was insane.
I haven't seen Naito move that fast and that crisp and just on since his feud with Kota Ibushi, where they were trying to kill each other. And I feel like literally that took years off of Naito's career, and his work kind of went downhill from there because he just physically couldn't handle it.
Well, all right. So most noteworthy part, and I only noticed one of these spots like in real time when I was watching the match, but he literally got knocked out twice by Ospreay in that match.
Really? In what two spots? I did not catch that.
Two kicks. One was like a kind of like a short super kick thing. That was the one that was obvious because he fucking dropped like a.
Okay. I do remember that because I remember I watched and I was like, oh shit. And so I've heard other people, I guess there's a big debate as to whether or not that was just really good selling.
No way. He absolutely got kicked in the head.
Yeah, it was one of those hook kicks that Ospreay almost does from behind.
No, that was a different one. That was a different one. There was that like
spots mixed up.
There was that one where he got kicked. He got the crescent kick, hook kick, whatever. But there was another one where he was like slowly getting up, and like Ospreay was going to catch him with like a super kick, like as he's rising up, and except he really caught him with it.
Like Naito leaned into it almost.
Kind of, but but he like face planted right after it, and like didn't protect himself at all. Like, I mean, he was out.
Wow.
And
I need to watch that match again. I remember watching it and just being like, this is incredible, but I didn't watch it that closely. That will definitely be a match that will be rewatched. So I'm not worried about that. But yeah, that match to me, that was the match of the tournament. And I don't think anything was going to be able to stand up to that.
No, and the final was amazing, especially.
I thought it was a great match too, no doubt about it. But it wasn't at the level of the Ospreay match.
But it's great, and especially considering the fact that Naito's brains had to still be scrambled after that. Less than 24 hours later.
I bet he was hurting once those 2 days were over. I mean, holy crap! I mean, hell, I will say in the semifinals when Okada beat Evil. That was one of the better Evil matches I've seen in a while. I mean, it had all the stupid bullshit, but I mean, some of it made sense. I mean, Okada basically made his own save and took everybody out, but I was just watching that match praying that Evil didn't win because figuring that Naito was most likely going to beat Ospreay, I was like, I could potentially see an Evil Naito final,
right?
But I understand
looking wise,
I understand from a selling tickets perspective that you would want Okada and Naito, probably the two biggest stars in the company currently, considering that Tanahashi is not at that level anymore,
right?
So I mean, I thought that match was incredible too. I mean, again, I thought Ospreay and Naito was better, but I mean, you can't go wrong with the Naito Okada match. And I mean, and also yes, I think we were probably both pretty sure that Naito was going to win because again, we had predicted him to do so. And his storyline all year has been that he wants to do the roll call at Wrestle Kingdom.
Right.
But I mean, Okada had just won 2 G1s in a row, and he's pushed to the point that winning 3 in a row, totally I wouldn't have been shocked at all. It would have been kind of boring because it wouldn't have been anything new, but I wouldn't have been surprised if he had won.
I would have been surprised, but I do agree with the idea that you can never rule Okada out just because of the status that he's at. You know, he's like the John Cena of New Japan in the fact that just like he's always ready to have the belt put on him or get the big win or whatever, and it doesn't like upset the earth or whatever.
No, he doesn't have to get heated up. He's basically heated up and
Right.
ready to go at all times.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, no, it's I thought definitely the best overall tournament since the pandemic. Didn't quite, not quite hitting the levels of like 2017, 2018, that era when it was just fucking amazing. But still very, very good. I think my big takeaways, like we were saying, the 20-minute time limit's good. I think 32 is too many people. I think I honestly think they could go to like even just 28 and just having like one match less a show. I think that would make a big difference.
well, last year it was 28.
Yeah.
And it was 7 people in a block, and everybody had one less match. And they didn't have any 8-match shows. They had basically it was like 4 or 5 matches on every show because they are still going to do 19 shows total, but they had it spread out a little more because everybody got one less match.
Oh, and another thing I meant to mention, talking about the Three Musketeers and everything like that. Another way that they seem to be kind of separating Tsuji from the other two, they really started doubling down on the Narita and Umino rivalry during the playoff shows when they were just having the two of them in multi-man matches.
Yeah.
And basically like every match they were in, they wouldn't have been involved in the pinfall, but then they'd have to get pulled apart from each other afterwards. And it was just really well done by the two of them. It was like convincing pull apart brawls where it looked like they, two guys that like really did want to fight each other and like people are holding them back as opposed to just the normal kind of whatever type thing. So glad to see that's that kind of long-term plan is being laid down, because I totally makes sense for the two of them to be kind of the Muto Chono, never ending type feud thing.
Yeah, I could see that as a Wrestle Kingdom match this year too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And because then also, and you might have been about to say this, but Tsuji on that last night in the tag match, he pinned Ospreay, right?
Yeah, well, and he's getting I think it's the actual Destruction in Kobe show at the end of the
main eventing.
He's getting a shot again for the US/UK title.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I haven't watched anything from the last night except for the finals, but I did hear that I guess that was a tag match. I don't know who their partners were, but I think it was an LIJ versus
United Empire,
United Empire. And yeah, I mean, usually in those matches, it's very obvious who's going to take the pinfall. You got Bushi on one side, and then on the other side, I don't know.
Probably Okan or something.
I'd say Okan probably before Jeff Cobb. But yeah, and then Tsuji pins Ospreay. I mean, that's going to be incredible. That just feels like a new, fresh match that I hadn't even thought about. That, yeah, I mean, that is main eventing the Destruction show that's like a little over a week from now, I think.
Is it that one or is it the actual big show in Kobe?
No, I think it is the big one in Kobe, which maybe that's further down the line.
That's the one that's like the 24th.
Oh, so that's still like 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing this new kid, Ospreay's protege, debut in New Japan too, Callum Newman.
Who's that?
He's Ospreay's protege. He's a new kid. No, that's about all I know. He's from Rev Pro.
I feel like Ospreay has had like 5 of these guys over the years, and most of them have worked out because or they came in as like his rival. Like I'm thinking like Robbie Eagles, ELP.
Yeah.
Did he bring in what's his face? Francesco Akira?
Maybe.
I think he did. Like,
he's with United Empire, so I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Osprey's got a pretty good track record of having people come in and either they get over as a babyface or turn on him or whatever. Hell, I thought ELP, I mean, his match with Osprey was awesome,
Yeah.
but I thought ELP had a great tournament. And I mean, the fans, it was like he slowly changed his style throughout the tournament to that of more of a babyface instead of it just being like, I'm not a heel anymore, I'm a babyface. Big change. It was like it kind of was a gradual thing throughout.
Yeah. It was good storytelling, showing that he's trying to change his ways and all that. I think as much as I like that match with Osprey, I think one of the reasons I'm not quite as crazy about LP as I used to be is just that I don't know. I feel like his transition to heavyweight hasn't been all that great. I think he was much better as a junior. And I get that like you don't want to work that high flying style forever, and there's a lot of reasons to make that transition. I just think he's not as interesting as a heavyweight because he's not a threat. Like he's not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, immediately you can compare him to Osprey. Osprey became a heavyweight. He put on like 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And like, yes, he can still do all the crazy flying stuff, but now he also has like some of the best chops in the entire world. Clearly he's got some stiff kicks because you said he knocked Naito out twice. Hell, I remember at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, there's being stiff, and then there's being like Bill Goldberg against Bret Hart. But
I remember
obviously Osprey gets a pass on that. It's not like he's not a good worker or anything.
I mean, hell, he kicked Kenny in the face and left a footprint on his face at Wrestle Kingdom. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Osprey is on another level.
All right. So speaking of chops, nice transition to this year's N1 winner, Go Shiozaki.
So yes. So tell me, I've seen very little N1. I plan on watching at least the main events, and I mean, I'll definitely watch Go and Kino, but I mean, between those two, Nakajima, and I know you said Manabu Soya absolutely leveled up. It sounds like multiple levels.
Like Soya was definitely the MVP of the N1. Just amazing. Noah is relatively new to me for the most part. Just I'm not. Most of my experience with Noah is from like way back when they first started, and only maybe like the first year or so with that.
Right.
So
they're basically the biggest company in the world.
Right. So this current incarnation of Noah is stuff that I'm playing catch up on for the past couple of years. But Keno, I'm a huge fan of. I love everything I've seen from him. Nakajima is very intriguing for good and bad reasons. It's funny because people were speculating on like Reddit or somewhere this past weekend after everything went down with Punk about like, would he finally go to Japan like people have always thought, he would and just never quite did. And it turned into one of those things of, people speculating like, what if he goes into Noah and, gets in the ring with somebody like Nakajima and like Nakajima here's like, oh yeah, this is a UFC guy and stuff. And it's like,
break his fucking head off.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Nakajima is like, he's very charismatic. He's great in the ring, but he's like,
he scares me.
You can't excuse the shit he's done. I mean,
some of it's totally been on purpose. I think he hasn't tried to.
He's like Akira Maeda back in the day. Like he's good. He's just a fucking
Akira
asshole.
Maeda became a massive star who made millions of dollars building a promotion around him off of the fact that people were scared of him.
That's kind of my beef with Nakajima too. Is just like half his reputation is just he potatoes the shit out of people, and like that's not cool, But like at the same, like he's undeniably good though.
He's undeniably good, but Noah is not going to make him their champion again if they're worried he's going to knock people out. I mean,
probably not anyway. I mean, no, talk about a company that the booking makes like no sense whatsoever. Like, I don't know. Cause it was like, as much as like Go Shiozaki is a worthy winner and all that. And it was actually the first time he won the N1.
Which surprised me. I thought he'd already
Yeah.
won it like 2 or 3 times, but
Well, that was the thing that the announcers kind of tipped their hand on that at the on the final show. Like they really oversold that point to the point where I was like, oh damn, well I guess he's going over, you know.
Yeah.
But like where I was going with that, it was just like it wasn't like he was getting booed or anything like that, but like the crowd clearly wanted Keno to win. And it was kind of like it was kind of a lackluster finish to begin with. I mean, honestly, not like an amazing match to begin with either, but you just felt like the air go out of the room when he got the pin. I mean, he still got cheered, people were happy for him, but Keno got like a bigger reaction just walking out of the arena than Shiozaki did during his celebration.
I feel like Keno doesn't. I feel like his popularity is beyond that of his push.
Yeah.
Even though
he's gotten himself over.
Yeah, you know? he's pushed strong. I mean, he's what? At least a 2-time GHC champion.
I think so.
But
and won several times too, I think.
Right. I feel like, yeah, it's like sometimes people get pushed too fast and their skills have to, or their ability to get over has to catch up to it. And sometimes it's the other way around. And it seems like he's the other way around, and they kind of go back and forth on whether or not they want to push him to that level. I mean, he was in the N1 final, so that's obviously a vote of confidence. But
that's kind of been worked into his gimmick too, I think. You know, that he's all like, whether he's
angry, right? Like, that's his gimmick, right?
Do what?
He part of his gimmick is that he's very angry. He speaks his mind. He doesn't hold back, and he's a good promo.
He's perpetually got a chip on his shoulder, whether he's a face or a heel.
That's a much better way to put it than the way I did. So,
well, no, you're right though. But no, Soya had just an unbelievable tournament. That was another one that when Shiozaki beat him, it was very obvious the crowd wanted to see the result go the other way. So it's kind of unfair to go, you know, because like he was putting on great matches too and everything, but you just felt bad that like it just like the timing was wrong, and it wasn't like a time when the fans were really going to get behind him and all that. But yeah, those were kind of my overall impressions from the tournament. Was that outstanding performances by those three guys. Maybe possibly the wrong guy won though. You know, it did seem more like it was just kind of like a, hey, you know what, you deserve it. You should have had this box checked off a long time ago, so we're going to give it to you, which is, in my opinion,
not a good reason.
Yeah, almost never a good reason to book an outcome that way. But yeah, some other impressions I had. Jack Morris, who I think you brought up before, that dude has WWE written all over him. Like he's good. He's definitely a good worker. He had some good matches, but he's built for WWE. Like I think he's got to go there one of these days.
He's probably already on their radar. I mean,
oh, I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
And he's Scottish too. You know, they like those UK guys and, you know, all that right now.
Yep.
Good looking guys.
McIntyre's little brother.
What was that?
He could be.
Oh yeah, he could be McIntyre's little brother. Yeah, exactly. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the good looking guys stable in general. That's kind of they're pretty much. They seem to be kind of filling the void that Congo left after they broke up. In a way, I mean, I think they're more. I don't know. There's a different. Do what?
Are they baby faces, or is it?
They seem to be,
or to the point where you can't really say.
I think it's one of those deals. Well, kind of like some of them, like Jake Lee's definitely a baby face.
Okay.
I
didn't realize he was so tall.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until he showed up in Noah. Off topic, but.
And Zainichi Japanese, I think is the term as well. Like he's actually Korean, but he's grown up in Japan and has like a.
So he's like Ricky Choshu.
Yeah, or Ricky Dozen.
Another good one.
Yeah.
Except for back then they had to basically like hide that, or else they would not have been cheered under any circumstances, which is still wild to think about. But
yeah, and there's still some of that going on, I think, but it's not at all like it used to be. To your point. From what
I
I
thought
understand.
Jake Lee was Chinese. Maybe that's just because his last name is Lee, which is probably not even his real name anyway. So,
Well, Lee's a Korean name too, though.
you're probably right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's and then their junior division is fantastic, but completely underutilized.
I
In
just
my
don't think
opinion.
juniors with Noah, but yeah.
I mean, well, just the Tadasuke and Yohei tag team, they are fantastic. Um, and I guess they had like Chris Ridgway and Daga or the junior tag champions, and apparently just today had to relinquish the belts because Chris Ridgway is dealing with some kind of personal issue and had to leave the country.
Oh.
So I guess there's gonna but it's interesting that it lines up that way because they're in the midst of doing a tournament, which it was never clear to me like what the end game of that tournament was, like if they get a title shot or what. But I guess now it would line up with like, okay, the winner should just get the belts, but I don't know they're actually doing that because again, it's Noah and nothing totally makes sense. So
No.
yeah. But then also Psycho Clown is going to Noah. That was one of the big
Really?
developments. Yeah. He my boy the son of El Hijo del Santo, Dr. Wagner Jr. the third. He had a match. It was like a tag match actually at the final, and Psycho Clown came out and attacked him and said he's getting the next title shot for their mid card title, the national title or whatever.
Is El Hijo Del Hijo
Right.
he's still the national champion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did he have a good showing in the N1? Because I thought he was improved. I figure he got his spot based on his name.
Yeah. I mean,
but he's a large guy for being a Mexican wrestler, and I thought he was hanging with the heavyweights in some of the matches that I had seen from like a year ago. But
he's huge for a luchador, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
He's bigger than his dad was, I think.
And his dad was a pretty big guy, so
yeah. Yeah, he was okay. Like he didn't quite blow me away. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the Gaijin in that tournament. I think I was most impressed by either Jack Morris or Saxton Huxley.
How many wins did they actually let Jack get? Because remember, he got a title shot earlier this year against Jake Lee's first defense, I think, was against Jack Morris.
I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. Kiyomiya, before Kiyomiya lost the belt to Jake Lee, one of his last defenses was against Jack Morris. That's what it was.
Yeah, he finished, well, technically third place in his block, but there was Keno and Jake Lee tied for first in block A, but Keno had the tiebreaker, so right. he advanced. But then, yeah, Jack Morris was just 1 point behind them.
So Keno got a win over Jake Lee, so he'll probably get a title shot between now and January what is it? Noah's big show is on New Year's Eve, right? Because that's probably when
New Year's time frame.
Yeah, Jake Lee. And
yeah, I'm not clear on that either. I mean, they definitely obviously Go is getting a title shot, and they did an angle after the match with him and Jake Lee. And this is mainly just my ignorance of how Noah does things more so than they probably did mention it on the show, and I just didn't understand the Scottish accents or something. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know if that's happening at New Year's or if it's happening before then. But yeah, to your point, presumably Keno would get a title shot as well at some point since he did beat Jake Lee.
Right. So I'm not an expert on how Noah's schedule is either, but I'm pretty sure last year because last year at the New Year's show was when Kiyomiya won the title from Keno after Kiyomiya had won the N1 in 2022. So I think that's how it works. But I mean, that's so similar to the way New Japan does things. It's like they're copying it and not even trying to like hide it. I know that's kind of that week is huge for wrestling in Japan anyway, so it's logical for them to do their big show then.
Well, it's not just that; it's entertainment in general in Japan. Like everybody has like huge, like all their TV shows, everything like that. Like they always have this big New Year's special. Like it's
because basically everybody's on vacation for like a 2 or 3 week period that ends with this week, right?
Yeah, they basically do like extended Christmas break, and they
For
it's
everybody, not just kids. It's
like a secular holiday over. I mean, it basically is a secular holiday here too, but like it's basically everybody's off and like with their families and sitting around watching TV.
So yeah, I mean, you're gonna have. Well, I don't think they're gonna have 40,000 people in the Tokyo Dome, but you're gonna get more people, and
Noah's not. Yeah.
Well, they're definitely not going to do the Tokyo Dome for that show. But isn't that last year? That was when they went. Was it the Nippon Budokan that?
Maybe
I feel like they ran somewhere that would seem to be much above their stature. That was also in the lead up to Muda's retirement, which sold a whole lot more tickets than anything Noah had done on their own in a while. But
and obviously that was in the Dome. But I was thinking they had a Dome show before that.
Was it the Dome show where it was them and New Japan against each other? Well, here, let me just look it up real quick.
Wait, that wasn't in the Dome though. That was in like Yokohama, I think.
You're right. I think that was at the Yokohama Dome.
I don't know. Well, another thing I'll say about the final show though, a surprisingly entertaining match, because you know how Noah does these like sort of fake MMA rule type matches.
Yes.
And generally when I've seen them, they've been awful. Like I think that's that whole work shoot style or whatever you want to call it. It's
doesn't usually work that great.
Yeah, it's so hit or miss. And like occasionally you get something like Takada versus Muto back in the day. That was pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
But 90% of the time it's garbage. But they did Josh Barnett versus Masakatsu Funaki. Speaking of old ass people.
Wait, that was on the Noah shows?
Yeah, this past weekend. And it was actually very good.
I saw a thing promoting that, and I did not realize that was on I just follow Josh Barnett on Instagram or something, and it was showing that, and I was like, that's slightly interesting, even though combined they're like 120 years old. But
yeah, you would have thought that would have been like Bloodsport or something, though, you know?
Right. Well, I figured I knew it was in Japan. I figured Masakatsu Funaki had maybe like his own like small indie promotion that he did on the side of being in Noah. I always forget that he's even in Noah because I feel like he should be like
technically Sakuraba still is, I guess, which talk about somebody that needs to just chill the fuck out. God.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Sakuraba looks like he's a space cadet, whereas Funaki looks like he's perfectly fine.
He looks better than Sakuraba. I'll agree with you there.
That's not saying much though.
I can't look at Sakuraba without thinking about like all the matches with Vanderlei or Ricardo Arona or just any number of times that he got the absolute, like literally almost died.
Yeah, where he basically probably got major concussions that were never even diagnosed. And now
he's taking bumps.
Yeah.
Sort of anyway, but yeah. But no, like Barnett versus Funaki was surprisingly good.
Actually. Was that on one of the N1 shows?
That was on the final this weekend. Yeah.
Okay. So basically I just need to watch the entire final show. You already told me.
Honestly, yeah. Like it was real. Like the main event might've been the worst match on that show, and it wasn't terrible. It just kind of it just didn't live up to expectations. But Ogawa and Zach versus Kiyomiya and Oiwa. That was a really good match. Barnett Funaki was good. Funaki was really good. There's like a four-way Lucha Libre match that was excellent. And there's I gotta look up this dude's name because I can't remember. But
I will say that Noah on their shows, they're better than New Japan at mixing it up and having multiple styles on the same show, so you can get a little bit of everything. Whereas New Japan, everything is kind of just an offshoot of strong style or whatever. But in Noah, you get your Kings Road matches, you get your lucha matches, you get your worked MMA matches, whatever you want to say. Obviously, all of these matches don't always work, but they do offer more variety than your standard New Japan show, where
there's definitely more variety. I think that's fair to say. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't always. They don't always pull it off.
You were looking up who again?
Yeah. So there was one of the 6-man matches they had on that show. Nakajima, Hajime Ohara, and Junta Miyawaki versus Soya, Kondo Shuji, and Seiki Yoshioka. You need to watch that just for the finish. It's fucking
okay. Then in that case, yeah, don't tell me. Usually, I don't care about spoilers, but if it's just that there's a crazy finish, I'll be interested to see that for myself then.
Okay, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But like, I don't even know. I sort of know how to describe it, but it's just like a goddamn death move. Like, it's insane. And I was actually looking it up. I'm pretty sure that was the right match anyway. So the winners of the tag tournament actually did get the shot against Ridgeway and Daga at this last show. So that was one of the matches as well. I was mixed up on that point, apparently.
So I assume they beat them because Ridgeway had to go home for something.
Yeah, spoilers, but yeah. Yeah, I blew that one, I guess.
Well, no, I didn't care about that. I mean, I know that Shiozaki won and all that stuff. I just want to. I'm curious to see what that one finish is, to see if I jump out of my seat, because that scares the shit out of me.
Good stuff. I think. Oh yeah, the only other thing I wanted to bring up on this, going back to Ospreay, and pretty much he just does what he wants and wrestles for whoever the hell he wants to at this point. At some point this month, I believe, is when he's getting to wrestle Marufuji in Noah.
In Noah?
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, that sounds awesome. I didn't know.
It's definitely happening, but it's weird because I don't see it's I don't know. It doesn't seem to be listed anywhere like upcoming on Wrestle Universe or anything like that. But yeah, if you Google Ospreay versus Marufuji, like there's articles about it. Like it's definitely happening.
Well, I've noticed, and this seems to be a recurring theme. Like a lot of the top guys in the Japanese scene, so not just in New Japan, but maybe even more so in Noah, it's almost like they have their own little offshoot promotions where they can do it usually seems more like a vanity project, but I didn't know if maybe it was something like that, where like Marufuji, and a lot of times they get these shows together with people from multiple promotions, because it's like not Noah having to ask for Will Ospreay to be sent to a Noah show. It's more like Will Ospreay asking permission to go work Marufuji's show or something like that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking
that
about.
May not be the case, but
I think in this case it's a Noah show. Like it's Marufuji's like 25th anniversary,
and maybe he just said, "I want Ospreay," and
that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe it's just for some reason it won't be on Wrestle Universe, which seems silly.
I mean,
but
maybe New Japan's okay sending their young lions, and they're not going to send Ospreay. I don't know. Who knows? I'm sure we'll be able to see it one way or another. So,
okay. So one final topic then. I think this is like the third time I've said that, but this is going back a bit, but I don't believe ever talked about the Nakajima versus Miyahara match.
No, and I have not even watched it yet.
Oh,
but you can go ahead and talk about it. I'm going to watch it, and it's so long ago that I don't care about spoilers.
Well, no, I mean I think you know who won by this point anyway, but but it fantastic match. Like probably
that was at Corkin, right?
Yes, it was.
And that was on a Noah show.
Yeah, it was prior to the N1.
It was like one of the last shows before the N1.
Yeah, actually, it was like right at the beginning of the G1. I think it was like during the first weekend of that or something.
So it got kind of lost in the shuffle to a degree.
To a degree, but honestly, like it was amazing. It was a fucking awesome match. I guess I don't know the full backstory, but I guess they supposedly really do have heat, or did at one point or something.
Right.
And so there's just a lot of tension in the match, and lots of, Nakajima's working his typical style, and Miyahara's giving it right back to him, and it had a cool finish. It's clearly like not settled or over. Like, I fully expect there to be, logically anyway. I mean, who knows with, logic hasn't always played a role in some of these matches as we've talked about, but
Yeah.
Logically there's going to be a rematch and Miyahara is going to get one back on him. But we'll see. But that was a badass match and definitely worth checking out, more so than the N1 final, I would say.
Well, then maybe I'll watch that first. I just think it's great, all the crossovers. Like in years past, I mean, obviously when there was Inoki and Baba running their companies, there was a reason they didn't cross over. They didn't care for each other, whatever. And as soon as, Baba passed and then All Japan basically fell apart, they started working together. But it just seems like now it's extremely common to take your top guy from All Japan, Miyahara, and All Japan is pretty far down the pecking order at this point. I mean,
yeah.
Are they above or below Dragon Gate? That's probably debatable.
Probably.
A distant third to Noah, who is a distant second to New Japan. But just the idea that these companies, Miyahara is as big of a star as anybody in Noah. And I think if he went to New Japan, he'd be as big of a star as anybody in New Japan. But he's an All Japan guy, and he probably will stay that way. And he can branch out and have these awesome matches with the guys that are in other companies. The whole collaboration, Forbidden Door, I hate that term, but it's literally like in the last few years, it's like all those borders got kicked down. To tie this back to what you were saying at the beginning, and that if you're not in WWE, you
can do business together, basically.
Yeah, or as long as it's not CMLL and AAA. But yeah, I just think, because I had no idea there was going to be an Ospreay Marufuji match, and I wouldn't have assumed that was even possible until you told me that. And now it's like, oh shit, I got to see that.
Well, didn't Marufuji do something semi recently with New Japan? Not back when he did that thing with Okada like several years ago, but within the past year or so, didn't he do something with New Japan?
I mean, he's always on the joint shows. Trying to remember.
I don't know. I feel like there's something I'm thinking of.
I know they did a big Marufuji versus Kenta match before Kenta came back to Japan, and it was like his first match in Noah in quite a while. And I think that was Marufuji's 20th anniversary, because if you're saying this one with Ospreay is about to be his 25th, I guess that was actually several years ago at this point. But I mean,
would he have still been under contract with WWE at that point?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, okay.
And he was brought over. I mean, I guess by that point, I doubt they cared anything about Kenta, because he wasn't like he was doing anything anyway.
Right.
But yeah, no, he was under WWE contract and came over and did that match with Marufuji, and it was like one of the biggest houses Noah had done in years. And
I still sometimes forget that Nakamura was on the Muto retirement show.
Yeah, I mean,
it's weird to think of.
Those shows were great. I mean,
they really were.
Those shows were what got me back into watching some Noah. I mean, I was watching. Well, no, okay. I was picking and choosing matches with like Keno and Kiyomiya and Nakajima, but it was those shows where I was like, well, Noah's actually worth watching. And I know you've watched a shitload more of it over the last couple of months than myself. I've got catching up to do, but
that's about when I realized, like, yeah, they're worth paying attention to as well, though. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got, young dudes coming up. I mean, a lot of their top guys are younger than the top guys in New Japan. I mean, I guess I don't know.
I feel like it's more the other way. Like they have.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the people that are, with the exception of Jake Lee, some of the people that have had their GHC title over the last few years would not fall into the anywhere near young category. Like, what's the dude's name? Ironhead. He was the champion, and
Kazuyuki Fujita.
I mean, Kojima got like a token reign, even though Kojima can still go. So but I mean, Muda was champion for a while, so you're right. I don't know what I'm saying. It seems like their main guys are all in their 50s, whereas New Japan's are in their 40s.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like one thing that's funny about wrestling now is just, and I think it's just kind of society in general. It's like people are kind of, 40's the new 30 kind of thing.
Oh, in wrestling, that is, yeah, that
Definitely
is
true of wrestling.
hugely true in wrestling.
But like, I mean, to keep talking about Manabu Soya, like he's kind of the perfect example of that. And people have been saying that, like, he really didn't start hitting his stride until the last year or two. And he's one of the people that benefited the most from Congo breaking up, because he's not in the shadow of Keno and Nakajima anymore.
Right.
But yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I think Noah's got the opposite problem of not having enough of a youth movement, and I don't know. It seems like most of their young guys tend to be juniors. I don't know. That's probably where they're their weakest. I would have to say, definitely don't have the depth that New Japan has.
But then they've got 27-year-old Kiyomiya,
who they
like
garbage are playing games with. Basically, it seems like.
Yeah, like it's a game of how much can they make him look like shit, and he still draws to a small degree. It's very, very strange.
Oh man. Well, covered a lot of ground today, though. And yeah, definitely looking forward to we'll have the Destruction shows, and then I guess King of Pro Wrestling after that, and then the tag leagues afterwards.
Is it still called King of Pro Wrestling? Because remember last year they were giving the shows new names based on the shows that they had used, because it was the 50th anniversary of New Japan. They were using the show names from the first year, and they called it something else, but it might be back to King of Pro Wrestling this year. It's the October show, whatever you want to call it.
Then the tag leagues after that.
No, so Power Struggle is in November, and the tag league is in December.
Okay.
The last tour before the Tokyo Dome.
I think Kid and Coughlin end up either taking that or being the ones to beat Bishamon for the tag belts.
I could see that. I mean,
they've got to.
I mean, they've still got the strong tag belts, right? I know that's kind of we were talking about how they're not coming over to the United States a whole lot anymore. So for whatever that means, I mean, Eddie Kingston is the strong open weight champion. I figure he's probably going to defend that belt more in AEW maybe than New Japan.
Well, Rocky Romero said something about he's going to try to get Strong to being more of like an episode, like it used to be,
right?
Kind of a weekly TV type deal, which is interesting because it does seem to kind of go against what the New Japan front office is saying about marketing in America and everything. But I'd like to see that personally, and I think it's tailor made for the War Dogs. The heavyweight belts and the junior belts. You give those to Clark and Dan Maloney.
Maloney.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in a while. I am looking forward to watching New Japan shows where the juniors are back, basically. Because I know they basically got off like the whole month of August.
Yeah, and at some point, well, in New Japan anyway, because they did have them working shows in like Rev Pro and Impact and stuff on those what they call it, like crossing the, I don't know,
the multiverse or something stupid.
Multiverse, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
But I know the end result of that is that there's going to at some point be a 3-way match between Hiromu, Leo Rush, and Speedball Mike Bailey.
Holy shit! Yeah, awesome. I'm going to see that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I actually heard, because we were talking about Sonata and whether or not he was going to be able to keep going. I'm pretty sure he is booked for an Impact match sometime over the next week or two.
Really?
Him and Tanahashi both. It's like, dude, if two people need a break, I mean, Sonata needs a break, torn bicep. He's got big matches coming up. Tanahashi just needs to take a break in general, which he never will.
But yeah.
Like he says, he never gets tired.
Maybe they're tagging and taking on Joya.
Maybe.
Or maybe they're taking on Tommy Dreamer and Bubba Ray. Who knows?
I did see Tommy Dreamer because I know he's been out for a while. He's got some match coming up where, and I don't keep up with Impact, so all I saw was the promo, but apparently he's putting his career on the line against somebody. And it's actually a lot of, because apparently Tommy's had a rough year. Like his mom died a few months ago, and like he was obviously super tight with Terry Funk. And he basically said in this promo, this has been like the roughest year of his entire life. And he's putting his career on the line. So I don't know. I see that kind of as that's going to be the end for Tommy, and he'll be a backstage agent or whatever. But I mean, he's 52 years old. And I remember 20 years ago, no, I'm sorry, 25 years ago, wondering how Tommy Dreamer was going to keep wrestling because he was working with a broken back and shit like that in ECW. So the fact that he still can walk, much less wrestle, is certainly a miracle.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how all these dudes do it, but yeah, probably time for Tommy to call it a day.
Maybe he is here in the next couple of weeks.
We shall see.
Or he was going to try to reach Terry Funk levels, which unfortunately, obviously, there's been a lot of wrestlers that have passed of a high profile over the last couple of weeks. So
there have. I mean, the whole thing with Bray is still pretty shocking. I mean,
he's 3 years younger than we are. So I mean,
yeah, and there'd been those rumors about him having heart trouble and stuff, but I guess this was like a long-term COVID thing or something. I guess I heard or heart damage from COVID or something.
I heard that he had some pre-existing heart condition, and it was getting better, and then he got long-term COVID, which made it worse. And then I read, and again, I'm reading this, I have no idea what happened. It said, like, I guess when he slept, he was supposed to be wearing like some kind of a defibrillator to where it would shock him if his heart stopped in his sleep, but it was like not super comfortable. And he went to just take a nap without it or something, and he didn't wake up. That was what I read. I don't know, but yeah, 36 years old, dude.
That's definitely way too young. And it's just, from a selfish fan perspective, he was one of the few bright spots of WWE for me for the last, 10 years or so. Definitely a really, really creative guy.
That's the term I've heard people use more than anything. They're like, he was so creative that, besides whatever he did in the ring, like he was probably going to be a creative person, high level in wrestling for the rest of his life. And then,
it's tragic. And it's sad to lose Font too, but that's, like we said, that's a life well lived. I mean, he, Terry was playing with house money at this point in terms of like how much he survived and endured.
I mean, just think about it. He literally was wrestling almost 20 years before we were even born.
Yeah, literally back in the 60s.
Yeah, back in like the mid 60s, he started up, and I mean, the world will miss Terry Funk, but a life well lived for sure. No regrets. Absolutely. Well, I guess on that really sad down note, we can wrap it up. I think we should do a check-in like this from time to time to keep up with our Puroresu. That's probably not how you pronounce it, but our Japanese pro wrestling, because
it's that weird kind of time of year for New Japan where it's not like, generally nothing like too terribly major happens, but we'll definitely, we'll have stuff to talk about with Sonata and Evil. We'll have stuff to talk about with seeing how the new Three Musketeers are coming along, and whatever happens at Power Struggle. I mean, there will always be topics to cover. So definitely stuff to look forward to. And in the, few months of run up to Wrestle Kingdom and the New Year's shows.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm open to more Noah as well. Like I'm going to try to watch as much of the N1 as I can, but I had gotten into, before the G1 was taking up all of my wrestling time, I'd gotten to where when Noah had a big show, I would at least watch the last 2 or 3 matches knowing they were going to be very good. I haven't done that lately, but
that's a good point too. Like after the big tournaments and stuff, it's not like you don't you're kind of forced to like binge watch just to keep up with it. You know, now it's more like you can just set aside a night to catching up on a show and all that.
Right.
A little
So
more
yeah,
reasonable.
now if there's like a big match on a Noah show, it's not overshadowed. You know, I'm not having to say, well, I'm going to watch that instead of this. It's like, yeah, it sounds like a horrible complaint. Oh, we've got so much great wrestling to watch.
Yeah, first world wrestling fan problems for sure.
So.
Right on.
But I think that's gonna wrap it up. We've been talking for close to 3 hours. But any final comments?
You know, just like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back with another episode at some point before too long, and fun time as always.
And me and TJ, I don't know when exactly, but we'll be back as well.
Yeah, the American edition's got to come back soon too.
It will. We're going to record at least by the end of the week, and there's been a lot that's happened in American wrestling over the last 3 weeks or so.
Just a little bit. A little bit. Yeah.
I'm going to try really hard for the conversation not to just be about CM Punk, but yeah, we couldn't even not talk about Punk though. Like, I know
you guys got to devote at least like 45 minutes to that.
We will. I'm just so tired of hearing about it. Like, I don't think I had been that happy to see somebody get fired from their job in a while. And still, I mean, it's not like the guy's hurting financially, but it's like.
Well, and think about it too. By the time you guys get around to doing the episode, he might have gone on like, one of Conrad shows or Cornette's show or something like that and talked a bunch of shit. So there's going to be.
Oh, he could have shown up on Raw, and I don't think that's going to happen actually, but
who knows?
I mean, Hunter's booking the shows, and I'm pretty sure they absolutely despise each other. So if Vince was still booking, Punk would be back in a heartbeat. I promise you. But
he's still the boss, whether he's technically booking or not. But anyway, y'all will cover that. I'm sure
we'll cover that. But thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for joining me, Adam. I think our conversations are always really good and very enjoyable. So it took me a while to get through the G1. I'm glad I did so we could have this conversation. When we look back on this in years, we'll just pretend that it was a couple of days after the G1 and not a couple of weeks. So
yeah, maybe we'll edit that part out along with your piss break, maybe.
Yeah, I might just leave the piss break in. I don't know. But no,
right.
We're out of here. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, watch it multiple times if you want. I mean, that helps too. So
share on social media.
Yeah. Sharing is caring.
All right. Signing off.
See y'all later.